네, 안녕하십니까. 세계일보와 세계 BGN 스포츠월드가 주최하는 2020 세계 아세안 포럼, 인도네시아 신행정수도 건설과 한인리 경제혁명 증진 방안 진행을 맡은 아나운서 김호정입니다. 반갑습니다. 네, 최근 우리나라와 아세안 국가가의 교역이 크게 증가하면서 아세안 국가에 대한 관심이 커지고 있는 상황입니다. 특히 인도네시아는 세계 4위의 인구에다가 많은 부존 자원을 갖고 있고 또 젊은 노동력이 풍부하기 때문에 성장 잠재력이 큰 나라라고 알고 있습니다. 작년에 이어 올해 두 번째로
Now,
개최되는
this is the
세계 아세안
second
포럼이
Segye
인도 일본에
Asean Forum,
주목받는 것은
and
제가
we're
보기에는
focusing on
매우
Indonesia
적절한
as we
선택이
did last year as well.
아닐까라는
And this is
생각이
a very
드는데요.
good
이렇게
decision, I
뜻깊은
think.
행사에 함께할 수 있어서
And
개인적으로 너무나
I'm very
영광스럽고요.
honored to be a
포럼이
part of
원활하게
this
진행될
event,
수
and I
있도록
hope that
저도
this
최선을
forum
다하도록
goes well. I will
하겠습니다.
do my best
참고로
in that
오늘 포럼은
respect.
한국과 인도네시아를
Today's
인터넷으로
forum, we have
연결해
an internet
진행하겠고요.
connection between
유튜브를
Korea
통해
and
한국어와
Indonesia,
영어 두
and
개의
this is being
채널로 함께
simultaneously
보고
translated
있습니다.
in English and
직접
Korean
찍어서
over
유튜브에 댓글을
YouTube.
달거나 질문을 올리는 분들
And there
중에
will be
추첨을
questions
통해서
asked, and to
선물도
those who
드린다고
ask
하니까요.
questions, we
많은
will
참여
have a lucky draw and we will
부탁드리겠습니다.
provide
그리고
presents.
현장 청중은 없지만
So
주최
please
측과
be active in
후원자,
that. We
중개위원회
don't
여러
have an
사람이 모이는
audience here
행사인 만큼
live,
이
but
코로나
all of the
이야기를 안 할
speakers
수가
and
없는데요.
discussants are here.
여전히 신규
Let's
확진자가
talk about the
주작에서 숫자의
coronavirus
수를 왔다 갔다 하기
a little
때문에
bit. We
결코
have
방심할 수는 없는
more confirmed
상황입니다.
cases recently,
따라서
going
오늘
into the
행사는
triple
정부의
digits.
코로나
So
바이러스 방역
today's
수칙을
event
철저하게
is
준수하여
following the
진행되고
government
있다는 점
guidelines on
알려드리겠습니다.
coronavirus
참석자
prevention.
여러분께서는 마스크를 제대로
All of the
착용해
people in
주시고요.
the forum will have to
실내에서는
wear
적극적으로
masks, and we
남들과의 대화를
do
삼가해
want to
주시기
limit
바랍니다.
conversations
또
with the
토론에
people next to
참여하시는
you.
분들도 직접 발표를 하실
And
때는
presenters
제외하고
and speakers
마스크를
here today,
계속해서
apart
꼭
from the
착용해
time when you're
주시길
speaking or presenting,
부탁드리겠습니다.
we would like to ask
자,
you to
그럼
keep your
지금부터
masks
세계일보와
on.
세계 비즈니스 스포츠월드가
Now,
주최하는
we will
2020 세계
begin the
아세안
2020
포럼을
Segye ASEAN
본격적으로
Forum
시작하도록
that's
하겠습니다.
co-hosted by Segye Ilbo and Segye Biz and Sports World.
네, 개회식 진행에
So
앞서서 먼저
before
오늘
we begin,
참석해주신
let me
귀빈분들을
introduce some of the
소개해드리도록 하겠습니다.
distinguished
지난해
guests that
세계
we
아세안
have today.
포럼에는 해외 연사
We had
성함과
3
우리나라
overseas
정부와
speakers
국회,
last year, and we
산업계를
had some
대표하는 많은
representatives from
귀빈분들이
the government
참석해 주셨지만
and National
올해는
Assembly
코로나
here,
바이러스
as well as
확산
business
금지를
leaders. But
위해
this year,
온라인으로
because of the
진행되기 때문에
coronavirus
별도로
outbreak,
귀빈을
we do not
초청하지
have any
않았습니다.
distinguished
올해는 포럼에서
VIP
직접
guests here today
발표하고
or any audience
토론하시는
as
분만
well. We only
참석해
have
주셨습니다.
the
호명
forum
되시는
organizers
분께서는
and the
들어가셔서
speakers and
정면의 카메라를
discussants here
통해
today.
시청자분들에게
So when I
인사해
call your
주시면
name, look into the
감사하겠습니다.
camera and say hi to the
먼저
audience,
첫 번째
please.
세션 진행을 맡은 문기봉 아세안
First of
비즈니스
all,
컨설팅 대표님
I'd like to
자리해 주셨습니다.
introduce Moon Gi-bong, and
첫
he's the
세션
CEO of
토론자인
ASEAN Business Consulting.
한국해외인프라도시개발지원공사 임한규
Next, Korea
사업개발
Overseas
부부장님 함께해
Infrastructure and
주셨습니다.
Urban Development Corporation Business Development Director Im
첫
Hang-gyu,
세션 토론자인 이기용
and also from the first
한국전력해외사업개발지원부장님
session
자리해
discussant,
주셨습니다.
Korea Electric Power Corporation Overseas Business Development Director Lee
두
Gi-wook.
번째와 세 번째 세션
Now let
진행을
me
맡고
introduce the
계시는
people from
강병태 한국해양대 초빙
session 2 and
교수님께서
3.
처음부터 함께해 주고 계십니다.
Kang Byung-tae, professor of Korea Maritime Ocean
두
University,
번째
is
세션
here.
토론자인
And
이재호
the discussant in
대외경제정책연구원
session 2 will be
전문연구원님 자리해
senior
주셨습니다.
researcher at the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy,
세 번째
Lee
세션
Jae-ho.
토론자인 김윤영
And
LH
for the
인도네시아
third session, head of
사업부장님도
Indonesia
일찍부터
business
오셔서
at the
자리해
Land
주고
and Housing
계십니다.
Corporation Global Business Division, Kim Yoon-young is here. He will moderate
역시나
that
세
session.
번째 세션
And the
토론자인
discussant of that number 3
백승택
session is
플랜
Plant Financing
부장님도
Director
함께해
at the
주고
Korea
계십니다.
Trade Insurance Corporation, Baek Seung-taek.
이어서 포럼 주최사인 세계일보
And now we
정희택
will
사장님
have
자리해 주셨습니다.
Segye Ilbo, President Jung Hee-taek with us as well.
세계일보 황정미 편집인님
And
함께해
editor
주셨습니다.
of Segye Ilbo as well, Hwang, Mr. Hwang, is also
네,
with
이상으로
us
내빈
too.
소개를 모두
And with that,
마치도록
we will
하겠습니다.
conclude the
다음은 이번 행사를
introduction.
주최하신 세계일보 정희택
Next, we
사장님의
will have the
인사말을
opening
청해
address
듣도록
of
하겠습니다.
Segye
여러분,
Ilbo
큰 박수로
President
맞이해
Jung
주시기
Hee-taek.
바랍니다.
Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Segye Ilbo and Segye Business Sports World. This year, we're continuing what we started last year. The 2020 Segye Asean Forum is opening today, and I welcome it with an open heart and great heart. I thank everybody here that are participating despite their busy schedules. For instance, Minister of National Development Planning Suharto Monoarfa, Republic of Indonesia. Also, His Excellency Agus Gumiwang Karatasimasta from the Ministry of Industry. All the speakers as well, thank you for your participation. Also, Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy, Republic of Korea, Sung Yun Mo. I thank you for your kind words that you sent in today. Also, Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Kim Hyun-mi as well. And also the local speakers and discussants that are here today, thank you very much for your participation. Right now, online, there's a lot of people attending as audience, and I thank all of the audience attending online as well. ASEAN is the second biggest trade partner with Korea, and among the ASEAN countries, Indonesia has 270 million population and is a G20 member country. It's one of the key countries in ASEAN. And so Indonesia has the largest population, the fourth largest population in the world, and the working population is 42.3% of the total population, which means it has a very vast and great labor market. Coal, nickel, copper, these types of mineral resources are plentiful as well, and Indonesia also has a lot of natural resources. So the growth potential for Indonesia is great. The Korean government last year in October signed the SEPA agreement, a Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, and on that foundation we laid a foundation for future economic cooperation. And especially Indonesia has now announced that it's going to move its capital from Jakarta to East Kalimantan. And so many Korean businesses want to participate in that big project. In Korea, we have an experience of moving our capital. We have a new administrative capital, and that experience could also help Indonesia in its capital city movement as well. So I think that we can both build a mutual win-win model based on Korea's experience and Indonesia's experience as well. So we have a saying here, hit the iron while it's hot. So we share common sayings as well. We have now is the time to act. So we have SEPA between Korea and Indonesia, also Indonesia's capital city movement. Through these opportunities, we think that the Korea and Indonesia's economic cooperation can be accelerated, and this can further the relationship between both countries. Segye Ilbo co-founder Dr. Han talked about the Asia-Pacific Union establishment with ASEAN countries as well in Indonesia. Partnership was broadly advocated. So Segye Ilbo, under this premise, we want this ASEAN forum to become an international forum, a key forum for development. Last year, the coronavirus started, and because of the coronavirus pandemic, the Indonesian officials we will invite through online methods, and so it's disappointing we can't have you here in person, but today through many presentations online we will be able to hear about Indonesia's opportunities and industrial development. Especially ministers from the Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of National Development Planning will give presentations as well. So I hope that this is an opportunity that actual economic cooperation and industrial cooperation can be discussed. Thank you all for your participation. And despite the difficulties, there's speakers and participants, discussants that are here to give their valuable input. And once again, I'd like to thank you all for your contribution. And the audience at home, I also wish for your health and happiness. Thank you very much.
네, 다시 한번 큰 박수
Yes, thank you very much. A
부탁드리겠습니다.
big round of applause, please.
다음은 정부의 산업통상
Next,
정책을
we
총괄하는
will have
산업통상자원부 장관님께서
The
축사를
Minister of
해주시겠습니다.
Trade, Industry, and
지난해에는
Energy,
장관님이
Sung Yun
직접
Mo,
참석하여 축사를
give a
해주셨지만
congratulatory
올해는
address.
코로나19로
Last year he was here in
인해서
person for this forum, but this year because of the
그럼
coronavirus
장관님께서
pandemic,
보내주신
we
영상
asked him to
축사
send a message through video.
안녕하십니까. 산업통상자원부 장관 성윤모입니다.
Good afternoon. I'm Sung Yun Mo, Minister of Trade, Industry, and Energy. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the opening of the 2020 Segye Asean Forum. Last year in November, before the Korean ASEAN Special Summit took place, this 2019 Segye Asean Forum took place, and I was present in person then. But this year, we're having the coronavirus pandemic, and I have to send in this video message, and it's a little bit disappointing, but still, I think that through the YouTube channel, many more audience might be able to join and participate, so I hope this is a good opportunity for that. Today, Korea's key partner in its new southern policy, Indonesia, we're discussing together how we can further and strengthen ties of economic cooperation. Indonesia is a very special country to Korea because Indonesia is the first ever overseas investment destination country for Korea. It's the first ever foreign country to co-develop an oil field with Korea, and first overseas plant construction was in Indonesia as well. There's about 2,000 Korean companies right now in Indonesia working in the fields of textile, steel, and petrochemical. And so economic growth of Indonesia and the creation of wealth, Korean companies are trying to contribute greatly. Also, there is more than 45,000 Indonesian workers working in Korea as industrial workers. And so Indonesia and Korea, together, we have become very important partners to one another. In 2017, President Moon was inaugurated, and the first country he ever visited after his inauguration was Indonesia. That really shows the special relationship of cooperation Korea and Indonesia has. Indonesia's population is more than 250 million, and it is the core member of ASEAN. So considering that, we don't think it's enough yet, and we should not be complacent. We have to develop our economic cooperation more. So first of all, we must develop together our key industries and develop together a manufacturing hub. Right now, POSCO's hot strip plant expansion, Lotte Chemical's petrochemical plant expansion projects are ongoing in Indonesia. And also, from last year, November, before the Korea-ASEAN Summit, because of Indonesia's eager support, Hyundai Motor Company is also pursuing to establish a plant in Indonesia as well. And so, our ministry, MOTI, is trying to further this development and provide our support that this economic development can continue. Last year in November, SEPA was established, a new comprehensive economic partnership platform, that is. So through this, we want to increase the trade between the two countries and increase our partnership. Through SEPA, by 2020, the trade volume should be increased by to $30 billion US, and in key industries and new growth engines, we hope to create 100 million jobs or more. Finally, for Korea and Indonesia to increase its economic cooperation, we pledge to organize the Korea-Indonesia Economic Cooperation Joint Forum, the Korea-Indonesia Economic Forum, and Energy Forum as well. And through these channels, we want to share our opinions on dialogue in the partnerships of steel, automobile, and so forth. So we want to build those channels to strengthen our relationship. Right now, the corona cases amount to about 23 million worldwide, and there are more than 800,000 deaths. We see the corona pandemic hurting our economies and limiting our movement around the world, and a lot of situations have deteriorated because of this. August 13, we agreed, both countries, on a fast-track entry system between Indonesia and Korea. So if this kind of cooperation comes through, I think this will help in alleviating some of our economic troubles that we face in this difficult time. Today's forum, I hope that this kind of constructive dialogue continues, and I hope for the prosperity, health, and good fortune of all the participants here today. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다. 이어서 한 분의 축사를 더 청해 듣도록 하겠습니다. 이번 포럼의 주제가 인도네시아
So we will continue the congratulatory address from the Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Kim Hyun-mi, will give her congratulatory address as well.
안녕하십니까. 국토교통부 장관 김현미입니다.
Good afternoon. I'm Kim Hyun-mi, the Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, and I sincerely congratulate the opening of the 2020 Segye Asean Forum. Indonesia is the largest economy in ASEAN and is a comprehensive economic partner agreement counterpart with Korea. In Korean history, it is the first ever overseas investment destination, and it was the first country Korea built an overseas plant construction for. Also, Indonesia is the first ever joint oil field development project partner with Korea. Last year, we shared our experience with Indonesia on a Korean-style capital city construction. MOLIT concluded a Korean-Indonesia MOU for capital city relocation and development, and through ODA and other expert communications and exchange, we want to help foster and facilitate the new capital of Indonesia. Already, we have made Sejong City a capital city, an administrative capital of Korea with state-of-the-art elements. And we will continue to share our know-how in this, as well as smart city technologies, to Indonesia so that our economic partnership and industrial development can continue. This forum is talking about economic cooperation, especially in the field of the new capital development in Indonesia. I hope you have fruitful results. Thank you very much.
다음은 내일자 세계일보 신문에 보도될 사진을 찍도록 하겠습니다. 조금 전에 소개해드린 내빈 여러분들께서는 앞으로 나오셔서 기념사진
So we're going to have a photo session now with all of the guests here today. Segye Ilbo President Jung Hee-taek and editor Hwang Jung-mi, Professor Kang from the Maritime University, and all other participants and discussants. Please come forward so that we can have a photo taken together.
네, 기념사진은 두 가지 종류로 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 제가
So we're going to have two photos taken together. When I say clap, applaud, everybody should applaud. Okay, clap.
네, 다음은 제가 하나 둘 셋.
And when I say 1, 2, 3, everybody will do a fighting gesture.
둘, 셋. 네, 감사합니다.
So thank you very much. Now you can take your seats. Now we will start the presentations and discussions in earnest. The first order is from the Minister of Industry, Indonesia, Agus Gumiwang Kartasasmita, and this is about Korea-Indonesia Comprehensive Economic Cooperation. Because of the corona pandemic, he could not be here in person, and he has sent in a video message. We have dubbed this into Korean language for the audience's convenience. Now let's listen to the ministers.
His Excellency Mr. Sung Yoon Mo, Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy, Republic of Korea. His Excellency Ms. Kim Hyun-mi, Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Republic of Korea. Mr. Jung Hae-taek, President of Segye Ilbo, His Excellency Suharso Manoarfa, Minister of National Development Planning, Republic of Indonesia, distinguished guests, government officials, and Korean delegation, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and appreciation to Segye Media for initiating this event in collaboration with Ministry of Industry of Republic of Indonesia and also Ministry of National Development Planning of Republic of Indonesia and all of the stakeholders from key Korean business sectors. Through the Segye Asean Forum 2020, I believe that we can take the advantage of this event for us to elevate our cooperation between the two countries, especially in business and industrial sector. This topic is very relevant and in line with the current policy in order to recover our industry in Indonesia from the impact of the pandemic. The amount of impact for the world economy is devastating. Only a handful of economies are able to be in the green area in the second quarter of 2020. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are in the midst of unprecedented times in history where an infectious disease has profoundly changed the way we live. Physical distancing, wearing masks in public, frequent hand washing, working from home, and virtual meetings such as the one we are having now only offer a glimpse of our new reality. These are our new normals, especially in Indonesia, amidst the challenge we are facing. Striving through these hard times and challenges, the Indonesian Statistic Agency, or BPS, announced that Indonesia's economy has experienced a sharp decline to grow minus 5.32% in the second quarter of 2020. The non-oil and gas processing industry was a 5.75% decline during the second quarter. The utilization of industry also experienced a downturn from 75% before COVID to 40% during COVID. We believe and we are optimistic that the economy will rebound in the third quarter of 2020. The main key relies on manufacturing sector, which is the primary driver of our national economic growth in Indonesia. This sector plays a vital role in creating value added and employment, which ultimately increases the development of the economy. In the second quarter of 2020, the contribution of manufacturing industry sector was the most significant contributor to the national GDP. It reached about 19.87%. There is still good news. Several industrial subsectors are showing that they are going strong. Those tough subsectors are chemical, pharmaceutical, and medicine, 8.65%, metal-based industry, 2.6%, paper production, 1.10%, and food and beverage, 0.22%. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Korea is one of the Indonesia's biggest partners in the manufacturing sector. Over the years, Indonesia and Korea continues to strengthen economic relations. Last year, 2019, the two-way trade between Indonesia and South Korea stood at 15.6 billion US dollar. Indonesia mostly exported iron and steel, wood and articles of wood, electrical machinery and equipment, articles of apparel and clothing, accessories, while Indonesia imported machinery, electrical equipment, iron and steel, plastic and articles from Korea. Key Korean industries such as Samsung and POSCO have already invested in Indonesia, while several others are seriously considering to follow, such as Hyundai, Lotte Chemical, and LG Chemical. It is an honor for Indonesia to be trusted as the home to those well-established companies to grow foremost in the future. The development of electrical vehicle policies in Indonesia has now become one of the examples of our biggest concern in industrial roadmap. Indonesia not only sets target to be an automotive production base for internal combustion engine, but also electrified vehicle or EV for domestic and export markets. The success story of automotive sector, we hope, could further trigger other sectors to take a more substantial role in Indonesia. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, paving the way for the inflow and managing the operation of investment during the public health emergency, we continue to pursue strategic efforts and policy that have allowed industrial activities to continue to take place. This, of course, is in accordance with the health protocols recommended by WHO to ensure the fulfillment of public needs. Furthermore, the involvement of the pharmaceutical companies from Indonesia and South Korea in terms of COVID-19 vaccine development is showing tremendous progress. We are hoping not only it will help both countries combating COVID, but create a stronger cooperation in the future. One of Indonesian government's supports that has been provided to make business world can still operate in the midst of pandemic is the issuance of an operational permit for mobility and industrial activities at the beginning of the second quarter of 2020. This policy during the past few months has helped the Indonesian economy to resist an inevitable downturn and produce a rise and rebound. This policy also will ensure the manufacturing industry to be competitive amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have also provided stimulus for the processing industry affected by the pandemic outbreak that includes relaxation for import tax, income tax, value-added tax restitution, as well as income tax allowance for individual enterprises. We are strongly pursuing investments in various industrial sectors. These include industries for import substitution, domestic market, and export-oriented industries, labor-intensive industries, and high-tech-based products industries. Indonesia has established 114 industrial estates and is planning to develop another 27 by end of 2024. I welcome Korean companies interested in developing industrial estates in Indonesia, as companies from other countries have done so. For investors, we have provided various fiscal incentives, such as tax holidays, tax allowances, and super deduction taxes. The super deduction tax is up to 300% for R&D and up to 200% for vocational development. Both fiscal and non-fiscal policies are aimed to not only help the recovery process, but also to boost the economy. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia strives to improve the quality of industrial-related policies for sustainable industrial growth and supporting investment in Indonesia, both domestic and foreign. Having said that, I welcome recommendations from all stakeholders, especially from the Korea, to enhance our future-related policies. Indonesia's strategic position as ASEAN economic leader has been a successful investment destination, providing ground. As one of the world's investment destinations, Indonesia is closing in to become ASEAN's manufacturing hub. We are also moving to become one of the region's production base for the global producers. Indonesia is aiming higher. The next decade is crucial for us. The investors and business players will reap the benefits and advantages of our demographic bonus, a large numbers of young population, workforce, and consumers. Finally, allow me to once again extend my highest appreciation to this collaboration and sincerely hope that this great moment could deliver higher value added with intermediate and advanced input by more partnerships established between the two countries' private sectors. And I do believe economy, trade and industrial relation between the two countries in the coming years will become a solid milestone for further bilateral ties. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
네, 감사합니다. 이제부터는 개별 세션 토론을 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째 세션은요, 인도네시아 중기발전 계획에 따른 프로젝트 소개입니다. 발표는
Today we will
인도네시아의
move on to
경제개발
the
계획을
projects
수립하는
that are being
국가개발기획부의
pushed by the
수아르호
Indonesian
모노아라카
government.
장관님께서 직접
Minister
해주시겠습니다. 이어서 국가개발기획부의
in
요사팔리잘
charge of
코리마나
the
차관님께서
transfer
집중
of the
설명과
administrative
토론을
capital will be
진행해
giving us the
주시겠습니다.
presentation.
그리고 세션 진행은 문기봉 아세안
Mr.
비즈니스
Moon
컨설팅
Gi-bong
대표,
will
토론은
be
한국
serving as MC for this
해외인프라도시개발지원공사
session,
이한규
especially during the
사업개발본부장과
discussion that will be following
한전해상사업개발청
afterwards.
이기욱 부장님이 수고해 주시겠습니다.
And Mr.
첫
Lee will
세션
also be taking
참여자분들은
part in the
앞으로 자리해 주시기
discussions.
바랍니다. 네, 준비하시는 동안 제가 참여자분들의 양력을
Let me
간략하게
briefly go
소개해드리도록
over
하겠습니다. 발표를 맡으실 수아르소
the
모노아르카
profile
인도네시아
of the
국가개발기획부
participants.
장관님은
Mr.
인도네시아
Minister
국회의원과 공공사업주택부 장관,
has
대통령
served
방문관의
as the
위원을
Minister
주로
for
지내신
Public Housing,
정치인 출신의
has also been
장관님입니다.
a
또
lawmaker
자장을
of
맡으신
Indonesia.
문기봉 아세안
Mr.
비즈니스
Moon
컨설팅
Gi-bong has
대표님은
been an
한
advisor to the
아세안센터에서
ASEAN
아세안
Marketing
관련 업무에서
Federation
일하셨으며
and
아세안
head
마케팅
of
페더레이터
headquarters
부부를 맡고
of
계십니다. 이번 포럼의
Korea
구성과
ASEAN
진행을
Center.
위해 정말 많은 수고를
He has made a
해주셨다고
great
들었습니다.
contribution in
이어서
making
토론자로
this
참여하는
forum
이완규
happen today.
KOND
Mr.
사업개발본부장님은
Im Han-gyu
SK건설 임원 출신으로
has
PFC장
worked as an an executive at SK Construction and has also been taking part in the plant projects overseas with private capital. Mr. Lee Gi-wook has been working for an extended period of time at Korea Power, especially on projects in Jordan.
자, 그럼 마이크를 문기봉 대표님께 넘기도록 하겠습니다.
감사합니다. 오늘 첫 번째 세션을 진행해 맡은 아세안
Thank you.
문기봉 센터장입니다. 첫 번째 세션은 인도네시아의 중기 인프라 개발
Today we will be hearing about the midterm cooperation between Korea and Indonesia.
인도네시아에서 인도네시아 그 중장기 개발 계획
The midterm development plan in Indonesia is being overseen by the Ministry of National Development. So we will first hear a keynote speech from him. Afterwards, we will have a discussion.
Mr. Jung Hee-tak, President of Segye Ilbo, His Excellency Mr. Sung Yoon Mo, Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, the Republic of Korea, His Excellency Ms. Kim Hyun Mi, Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, the Republic of Korea, His Excellency Mr. Agus Gumiwang Kartasasmita, Minister of Industry, the Republic of Indonesia, distinguished government officials and Korean delegation, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Let me first extend my appreciation to Segye Ilbo Media for organizing the Segye Asean Forum 2020. I believe this business forum will not only open opportunities for investment, business and economic partnerships, but also strengthen the friendship between Indonesia and Korea. The pandemic has put big challenges for all nations, including our countries, which emphasize the importance of international cooperation and solidarity to address its impact in all the sectors. Indonesia is currently facing challenges industrialization, in which our share of the manufacturing sectors to GDP started to decline early than that experienced by advanced countries. Today, compared to our peers, Indonesia's share of agriculture to GDP is relatively higher, while the share of manufacturing is relatively lower. In addition, the composition of our export is generally lower in technology and less complex. Indonesia's National Medium-Term Development Plan 2020 to 2024 is the point of departure towards achieving the 2045 vision and graduating from the middle income trap. We believe in 2045, Indonesia will become the fifth largest economy in the world. Means Indonesia is one of advanced economy country. To achieve this, the President of Indonesia has issued 5 directives, which include the development of human capital and infrastructure, simplification of regulation and bureaucracy, as well as economic transformation with these principles. Before COVID-19, we aim to achieve an average growth of 5.7 to 6% of GDP over the next 4 years. This growth will be driven by the manufacturing sector and supported by investment. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the impact of COVID-19 to the economy is undeniable. Indonesia's economic growth is adversely affected by the COVID-19 as the rest of the world experience. Indonesia economy has contraction sharply minus 5.32% in the second quarter of 2020. This pandemic has also decreased the utilization in almost all industrial sectors. We do hope that the economy will rebound in the third quarter of 2020 and it needs an extraordinary effort to recover Indonesia's economy to where it stands before the pandemic. To overcome the severe impact of COVID-19 and recover economic growth, Indonesian government carry out 7 development approaches, including 1. Investment acceleration, 2. Industry and trade recovery, 3. Financial sectors and development, 4. Strengthening the national health system, 5. The expansion of social protection programs, 6. Infrastructure development, and 7. Human resources development. Investment should be the key for economic recovery in the medium term. Investment is expected to provide jobs opportunity for post-pandemic unemployed and increase the productive capacity of the economy. Strategies to promote investment are: number 1, reducing investment costs in Indonesia. Number 2, increasing productive investment. Number 3, redirecting investment towards labor-intensive investment. Number 4, encouraging export-oriented investment. Number 5, accelerating export product diversification. And number 6, increasing tourism export. In order to implement the development agendas and national priorities of the National Medium-Term Development Plan 2020 to 2024, the major projects are formulated. The major projects involve funding from government, state-owned enterprise, and the private entities. The projects has high strategic value and leverage to achieve development priority and goals. The major projects among other include: number 1, 10 priority tourism destination. Number 2, there's 9 industrial area outside Java. Number 3, the development of Industry 4.0 in 5 priority subsectors. Number 4, the development of new capital city. Those major projects can also be a list of reference for investment and cooperation. For example, the new capital city project is expected to provide new investment opportunities and activities. As such, in creating new jobs opportunities, leveraging infrastructure investment that would provide large economic multiplier effect, and increasing trade activities between regions. The new capital cities development will require funding of approximately 466 trillion rupiah, of which the majority is contributed through the public-private partnership scheme. It's about 54%, while 20% come from the state budget and 26% comes from private and state region-owned enterprise. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the government of Indonesia realizes the importance of private participation in accelerating infrastructure development in Indonesia. Infrastructure funding needs in 2020 to 2024 is about 6,445 trillions, or it is about 45 billion US dollar in total. Approximately 40% of which is expected to be fulfilled through from private sector and through public-private partnership schemes. The private participation, however, is expected not only to fill the funding gap but also to share knowledge and experience in the development, operation, and management of qualified infrastructure services. To that end, the government of Indonesia has committed to continuously improve and innovate in increasing investment attractiveness and to assure that the involvement of private is not hampered. In Indonesia, there are 19 sectors that are viable to procure under public-private partnership scheme, covering road and transportation, energy and electricity, telecommunication and informatics, urban facilities and infrastructures, and social infrastructure such as health, education, sport, cultures, and tourism facilities. Indonesia is advancing our economic transformation while trying to elevate socio-economic impacts posed by the pandemic. That makes the effort to revive and to reconnect our economic cooperation with other countries are more prominent. We all may agree that cooperation and partnership will prove to be most effective in this time of need. Having said so, I welcome recommendation from all stakeholders to enhance our cooperation in the future, particularly in investment cooperation, as one of Bappena's roles is to coordinate the foreign funding sources to support national development. We also encourage South Korea's entrepreneurs to join in investment and to coordinate with Bappenas for cooperation to make sure that every funding that government of Indonesia receive is in line with our national priority in the National Development Plan. Finally, I would like to once again express my appreciation to all of us for having this forum. I highly believe that it will lead to cooperation and partnership that benefit both Indonesia and Korea. Thank you. Stay healthy, stay strong, and stay united.
예, 오늘 그 세션의 중요한 부분이기 때문에요. 그 장관님께서 직접 나오셔서 이렇게 설명을 주셨고요. 근데 이제 장관님 같은 경우는 이제 큰 정책과 흐름을 이제 설명을 해주셨고, 그 실무 차원에서 뭔가 좀 더 구체적인 이야기를.
We will now move on to the section where one of the government officials will be giving us some more details about these programs. So we have invited Dr. Ikon Kim, who is an expert on infrastructure, to give us more details.
예, 국장님 설명을 부탁드리겠습니다.
Mr. Director, please, the podium is yours.
First of all, I want to say our apologies because actually for this session, it has to be my director, Dr. Ikhwan Hakim, that present the presentation. But then due to another meeting that on progress with our minister himself, then he assigned me to present to you at this moment. So please let me present on behalf of him. So today's presentation, we want to share with you our National Medium-Term Development Plan 2020 to 2024. In the National Medium-Term Development Plan, we have strategic priority projects, or we call it major projects. We have 41 major projects that have been planned in our National Medium-Term Development Plan, and each detailing a clear target, location, and its implementing agencies. The major projects involve ministries and institutions, local governments, state-owned enterprise, and the community and business entities. The major projects serve as a reference for policy emphasis and funding in the Medium-Term Development Plan, government annual work plans, and also the state budget, or APBN. The highlight of major projects that we have right now, it's the development of 10 priority tourism destinations, the 9 industrial areas outside Java Island, the Industry 4.0 in 5 priority subsectors such as food and beverage, textiles and apparel, automotive, electronics, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals. And the next one is vocational education and training for Industry 4.0. And the last one is the new capital city of Indonesia. Next, please. So for the major infrastructure projects in 2020 to 2024, the first one is our priority program is to develop the infrastructure for basic service. It's covered the provision of adequate residential units, improvement in access to safe sanitation, and also the construction of house connections, which access to safe drinking water, the management of Citarum Harum, one of our river. And the next one is the expansion of clean water distribution in all regions in Indonesia, the integrated management of the coast, uh, north coast of Java Island, and the next one is multi-purpose reservoir or development and irrigation modernization. And then the next priority program is to improving the connectivity. It's covering the development of integrated port network throughout Indonesia and also the development of Makassar Parepare freight transport train, the development of several toll road or trans toll road, including in Sumatra and also in Java, the development of Jakarta Semarang and also Jakarta Bandung high speed rail, the development of Trans Papua road, the development of Papua, the aero bridge routes in Papua, the airport in Papua Islands, and the last one is Trans Road development. The next priority program is urban infrastructures. We want to develop the urban mass transport in 6 metropolitan cities in Indonesia. And the next one is the connection of city gas infrastructure development. The next priority programs is regarding in energy sectors. It's covering the completion of the 35,000 megawatt program and also the revitalization of oil refineries throughout Indonesia. The last priority program is digital transformation. We want to develop the digital transformation program and the completion of ICT infrastructure for multifunctional and last mile satellites. Next, please. For our highlight in major projects, the first one is the development of 10 priority tourism destinations. The area of these developments covering the Danau Toba tourism area, Bangka Belitung Island tourism development, Borobudur in Central Java, Bromo Tengger Semeru in East Java, the development of Lombok is also integrated to the economic zone of Mandalika, area in Labuan Bajo, tourism area in Manado, Likupang, development of Wakatobi area, the Morotai, and the last one is Raja Ampat in Papua Island. For the 9 industrial area outside Java, we developed one of industrial zone in North Sumatra, Semangke, and also in Sumatra Island is in Tanjung Buton, and also in Bintan Aerospace, Galang Batang as well, and industrial area of Ketapang. In Kalimantan, we have, the Ketapang is on Kalimantan Island. Ketapang and also industrial area of Surya Borneo. We also have the industrial area in Palu in Sulawesi, and KI Teluk Weda, and also KI Teluk Bintuni in Papua. Next, please. For the industry 4.0 in 5 priority subsectors, such as food and beverage, textile and apparel, electronics, and pharmaceuticals, Indonesia tried to revitalize the manufacturing industry through making Indonesia 4.0. The priorities covering the river material flow, redesign industrial zones, embrace sustainability, empower the SMEs, and also build nationwide digital infrastructures. We also try to attract foreign investment, upgrade the human capital, establish innovation ecosystems, and incentivize the technology investment, and also optimize regulation and policies. Next, please. For the vocational education and training for Industry 4.0, the government support and guarantee that implementation of secondary and tertiary vocational education in school that link and match with the industry that need the human resources. We also try to certificate and certifies the competence. All is absorbed by the industry, and we try to improve the vocational facilities and infrastructures. We try to develop more polytechnic that in line with the industry that we try to develop in the future. We also plan to accelerate the process of employment through links and matches between education agency, industrial human resource, industrial companies. We try to also improve the qualification of industrial human resource in accordance with existing technological developments. There are approximately 20,000 students and 100,000 industrial workers receive integrated education and training, both through industrial vocational schools and also industrial polytechnics, as well as non-degree training. Next, please. For the ICT infrastructure to support digital transformation, we try to upgrade the infrastructure that has been built and also try to expand the infrastructure itself in the next 5 years. We try to expand the optical fiber networks throughout Indonesia because the fiber optic backbone network built by the private and government operators has connected all regencies and cities. We also try to develop the national data centers in Jabodetabek and also in the new nation capital planet area. Next, please. For the urban mass public transport system, we try to develop it in 6 metropolitan areas that covering the Jakarta metropolitan area. We try to develop the MRT, LRT, BRT, the elevated loop line, and also the existing railway within Jabodetabek. In Bandung and metropolitan area, we are trying to develop and integrate the LRT of Bandung Raya and also the BRT that they already have right now. And for the Surabaya metropolitan, we also will develop the LRT and also integrate it with the BRT that they have right now. In Medan metropolitan, now we also in the stage of developing the study for the LRT. And we already have the BRT networks in Medan metropolitan area. We will try to integrate the LRT and BRT in the future. It also happens in Semarang and Makassar. In Semarang, we will try to we have a plan to develop the LRT and the BRT. And in Makassar, we will develop the existing railway connection that they already have, and also develop the BRT networks in Makassar metropolitan area. For this urban mass transport program, we also in the stage of making some regulations to regulate the share between local government and also the national government support to develop the network and the urban mass transport within those 6 metropolitan area, because as we all know, to develop the urban mass transport, we need quite high amount of money. So we will try to share it between national government and also local government. Of course, we will also try to cooperate with private sector as well to develop those urban mass public transport systems. Next, please. For the integrated main port network, we also try to develop several ports in Indonesia. That is Belawan Port, Kuala Tanjung, Kijing, Tanjung Priok, Patimban, Tanjung Perak, Makassar Port, Bitung Port, Ambon Port, and Sorong. We will try to develop all these ports and make it as an integrated network to improve our logistics connection. Next, please. And for the new capital city will act as a core for Balikpapan, IKN. IKN is the capital city of the new capital city of Indonesia, and also the Samarinda Urban Triangle. It will serve as the new capital city. It will the new capital city will be the heart or the historical center of East Kalimantan with rejuvenated energy sectors. And For the IKN itself, it will serve as the nerve center, the government core, and green innovation hub for the region. And Balikpapan will be the muscle base or the petrochemicals and logistics node for East Kalimantan. And for the financing, so as we all know, to develop all those infrastructures that needed in Indonesia, we need really a big amount of money. For the next 5 years, we need approximately 429 billion US dollar. So with the money that the government have right now, it cannot cover all the all the amount that needed by to develop all the infrastructures needed. So we will also try to find another funding mechanism or financing resources such as from the government that consists from the national government and also the local government. We also will utilize the funding from the SOEs. We also will utilize the PPP scheme for developing the infrastructures. And the last one, we also want to try to attract the private funding as well to develop the infrastructure in Indonesia. The next one, please, the last slide. And in these slides, I want to highlight several sectors that covered for public-private partnership in Indonesia. We divide the sectors that covered in PPP in Indonesia into three classification. The first one is the connectivity that covers the road, transport, electricity, the energy conservation, oil and gas, and also the renewable energy and telecommunication and informatics. For the urban infrastructures, it's covering the water supply, waste management system, water resource and irrigation, localized wastewater management, centralized wastewater management, public housing, and other urban facilities. And for social infrastructures, also covering the tourism area, education facilities, sports, art, and culture facilities, the whole zone and estates, and also the penitentiary. So I think that is my presentation today. Looking forward for the discussion afterwards. Thank you so much.
설명 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for that presentation. So the minister gave us a keynote address and talked about the midterm infrastructure development plan, and then at the working level we had a more detailed presentation about what infrastructure plans Indonesia has in place. And it was a very good presentation that we were able to have. Now we're going to have the discussion session, and the business leaders participating in the audience and the speakers here today, of course, would like to talk about the opportunities for Korean companies in participating in Indonesia's infrastructure development. Like we introduced, this is about well, as I introduced, the discussants are Im Hang-gyu, Korea's Overseas Infrastructure and Urban Development Corporation Business Development Director, and Lee Ki-uk from KEPCO. So first, Im Hang-gyu, Business Development Director at KIND, will talk about his opinions about industrial cooperation between Korea and Indonesia. Yes, good afternoon. I'm the Business Development Director at Korea Overseas Infrastructure and Urban Development Corporation. We call ourselves KIND, though. That's our acronym, KIND, KIND. That's how you can call our organization. In 2018, June, we were established, and the Korean government established us to help co-develop and co-invest in overseas projects. So our identity is a co-developer and co-investor for Korean companies. So Korean companies, when they participate in overseas projects, we assist. PPP, IPP, infrastructure projects, urban development projects, it's all included. So to talk about Indonesia, we've been established only about a year now. So last year in April, in Indonesia, Jakarta, we opened a overseas cooperation center. 3 people are working there at that office right now. And overall, about 70, 80 deals in the pipeline are going on. And among the 70, 80, always 10 or 15 is Indonesia projects. There's no project in Indonesia that has come to fruition yet, but we're working on it. We saw in the presentation earlier, but Makassar-Parepare, the railroad project with the Korea team, we went in together, and we was number 2 in that bid. And waste management project, we're also pursuing that, but we haven't seen any concrete results yet. But we're working hard to try to get these results. Now, we saw the Minister Bappenas and to the director that just spoke. We talked about a lot of infrastructure plans of Indonesia from 2020 to 2024. There was the midterm plan, and thank you for that explanation. I think it was a very fruitful presentation. And we know a lot about Indonesia on the surface level, but now in more detail, we are able to understand what Indonesia is pursuing. And so a lot of Korean companies are interested in investing in Indonesia, and I think that helped a lot. Now, when we do the Indonesia business, there are there's a lot of potential in Indonesia, and it's a very friendly climate with Korea. That's how we perceive Indonesia. But sometimes it's not easy to succeed in bids or pursue business. So let me talk about that a little bit, the difficulties that Korean companies face, and maybe Indonesia can respond by suggesting some advice. The Korean teams, the Korean businesses, what kind of preparation should we make? Maybe some advice can be given by Indonesia after my discussion. First of all, the new capital initiative in Indonesia. A lot of people mentioned that already, but in Korea, we have built Sejong City, a new administrative capital, and this is going to be a good example, I think, for Indonesia. So Korea is in a position to provide Indonesia with that kind of advice and assistance. And Ministry of Planning in Korea, EIPP, there's a program we do together with the Ministry of Planning and Internal Affairs, and it's called the Economic Innovation Partnership Program. So what this is, basically, we have our knowledge in Korea, and in long term, we're supporting other countries with this knowledge. EIP project is called, and the Indonesia capital project, KIND has actually taken over and is in charge of that. So it's going to be for 3 years. KIND has a separate organization to send to Indonesia for this project. But in 2020 and 2021, the Indonesia's budget, state budget, we heard that it was reduced, the budget for the capital movement. So to move the capital, President Jokowi, when he was re-elected, it was a pledge, a campaign pledge of his, but the Indonesian President Jokowi, his term is not a lot left now, and the corona pandemic has impacted a lot of situations where the financial situation and budget is not that plentiful. So that's why I think the budget has been reduced. But in this capital construction project, is it on track? I mean, that's a concern that Korean companies has. Is this going to be continued to the next administration? Let's say there's a presidential change, and that's what I want to ask Indonesia. Is it still going to be on track? And 2020 to 2024, if you look at the business plan, financing is going to be done by PPP a lot. That's what you say. private sector investment is something that you would rely on, and PPP is number 2, and then you have public companies and private companies and state budget coming together. And this is how you're planning to do the financing, but Indonesia PPP project, BKPM, or other Indonesian organizations, we are looking for routes to participate, but there's 2 difficulties in pursuing Indonesia PPP projects. First of all, the revenue model. On the revenue side, to have some kind of security, the government has to give some kind of guarantee or some kind of safety net for participating business. MRG or AP, you mentioned something like that earlier, but in Korea, we feel that that's not enough. And especially transportation infrastructure, energy infrastructure, the actual demand is very important, but because of the corona pandemic, the demand would drop, we believe. And so in that kind of a situation, on the revenue side, is there Indonesia's government, is there some kind of guarantee or safety net that you can provide? If you don't have that, the foreign investors will be reluctant to invest in Indonesia's PPP projects. So that's a concern. And number 2, on the revenue side, is local governments. A lot has gone to the local governments. Let's say the local governments should guarantee, or energy, or apart from some models, all the revenue models are rupiah based. But if the rupiah revenue is, if that's the case, then rupiah financing is difficult, and Indonesia's PPP would have a lot of currency risk. So revenue side protection on the government side, that's number 1. That's the number 1 concern we have. And number 2, to reduce the currency risk, Indonesia's government to PPP foreign investors, what can you provide the Indonesia government, that is? So those 2 issues are some kind of explanation that we'd like to hear. And so based on that, the Indonesia PPP, we want to try to find opportunities there based on some good resolution to these concerns. Thank you. So thank you very much for that discussion. And Indonesia gave us 3 questions, and I think the directors and deputy directors are going to prepare a response to the questions that were just posed, I think. So while we wait for those questions to be answered, we'll go to the second discussant of this session. From KEPCO Overseas Business Development, he's the director there. Lee Gi-uk, Director Lee Gi-uk will give the second discussion. And the questions that were just asked, we will get the response after all of the discussions here are over for this session. Okay, so I'm Lee Gi-uk from KEPCO.
Korea KEPCO has a cooperation with 5 of its affiliates to participate in power generation projects in Indonesia. This is currently ongoing, especially Jungbu Power Generation, along with 1 thermal power plant and another hydro power generation plant are playing major roles in these Indonesian projects. In recent years, KEPCO has achieved successful performance results with the Java 910 project. The construction has been completed, and Java 919 project is the result of a cooperation between KEPCO and a power generation company in Indonesia. And these 2 entities have made equity investments in the project. Hana Bank of Korea and other financial institutions of Korea, as well as heavy industry manufacturers of Korea, such as Doosan, have played their part in the construction. This is a thermal power plant with a capacity of 2,000 megawatt and is located about 100 kilometers away from Banten province. Because it's so close to Jakarta, the power generated will usually be supplied to the industrial sites in Jakarta and broader Jakarta. And that is why it was designated as one of the key industrial projects by the Indonesian government. However, this is not to say that there has not been any challenges. Because it's a thermal power plant that is using mostly coal, we have received a bit of backlash from environmentalists as well as investors overseas who are concerned about environmental pollution. Now, the Korean government, on its part, has its own policy of not constructing any new thermal power plants. In fact, the ones that are already in existence are being phased out over a couple of years. As we prepare ourselves to better cope with climate change, I think this is a natural evolution. And of course, Indonesia is not an exception either. However, having said all this, thermal power plants do offer some benefits, such as affordable power. In a way, power is essential to even get your business or economy started. You need power to run factories or have a school. I'm aware that GDP is about $4,000 in Indonesia. GDP growth is about 6% per year. And per capita electricity consumption in Indonesia has been rapidly increasing as well. The country is also ranked 5th in terms of coal production, and along with Australia, it is one of the top countries in terms of coal exports. So taking all of this in, yes, it is important for Indonesia to stay in line with the global trend of moving more towards recyclable or renewable energy. But if we consider the supply side of ensuring that there's a stable supply of power, we do need to moderate a little bit the pace at which they convert to renewable energy. So in order to support a more stable supply of power in Indonesia and in turn to promote economic growth, we will be doing our part. Thank you. So, of course, the term infrastructure cuts across many different subsectors. And in terms of electric power, you could compare it to blood flow in the human body almost. Now we'll move on to another topic. And Mr. Im has posed 3 interesting questions in regards to the National Development Project. The first is, what will happen in the post-pandemic era? A lot of the government budget has been used to address the pandemic. Then what happens to the budget that would have otherwise been available for the transfer of the capital? And of course, what about the profitability of the projects? Because the contracts would be nominated in Indonesian rupees, so how do you avert currency risk? So let's turn the podium to the Indonesian government to get a response.
Please turn on your microphone.
기술팀에서 강제적으로 킬 수 있을 겁니다.
Can the technical team unmute and turn on the microphone? There seems to be an issue.
지금 기술적인 문제점으로
Because of
지금
technical
저기
difficulties,
인도네시아
we're
답변이
not
안
hearing
되는데요.
the words being
인도네시아
spoken
쪽에서는
from
그
Indonesia.
마이크를
I think you have to
켜시고
unmute
답변을 다시
and start
하시기
again.
바랍니다.
Please turn on your microphone, unmute, and please start again.
인도네시아 사이드에서는
On the
지금 답변을
Indonesian
해주시고
side,
계시는데
a response is
마이크가 꺼져
being
있어서
given,
한국에 안 들리고
but the mic
있습니다.
is turned off, so we
마이크를
cannot hear it
켜고
in
다시
Korea.
답변을
Can
부탁드립니다.
you start all over, turn on your mic, and begin again? Okay, there is some kind of communication errors that are taking place, and because of the communication difficulties, we're going to have a 5-minute break, and we'll try to sort this issue out and then continue after the break. So let's have a 5-minute break to sort this out. Thank you.
hear your voice. The music, the sound is very low. Yeah, maybe you can make that louder for the music. Okay.
In the second session now, and the second session is about Indonesia, the midterm development plan and this infrastructure development. So we're going to start with the presentation of Director General Dodi Widodo from Indonesia here, and the moderator here will be Professor Kang Byung-tae from the Korea Maritime University, and the discussants are Im Han-gyu from KIND and Lee Gyu. So let me introduce the participants today. Director General Dodi Widodo of the Industrial Reliance Industrial Estate and International Access Minister of Industry is with us, and he's been the economic policy official for the Industrial Reliance Department and the International Industrial Cooperation. He's also the Industrial Policy Assistant to the Minister. And Professor Kang used to be the Korea Trade Insurance Corporation Vietnam Office Director, and he was the Vice President of the Project Financing Professor at the Korea Banking Institute and the First Director, Senior Researcher at the KIND, KIEP, Lee Jae-ho. He was official at the RO Commission to ASEAN, and he's the KIEP Southeast Asia Regional Economy Director. Okay, so let's start this session. Yes, I'm Professor Kang Byung-tae from the Korea Maritime University, and the session here, well, the presenter is going to be from Dodi Widodo, Director General of Industrial Resilience, Industrial Estates, and International Access of the Ministry of Industry of Indonesia. And he's going to talk about the industrial cooperation situation, investments, and infrastructure projects in Indonesia. And then we have Lee Jae-ho and Moon Gi-bong, CEO. These two people will be discussants in this session after the first presentation. So we're going to talk about the industrial infrastructure in Indonesia and how to strengthen economic cooperation between Korea and Indonesia. So we'll have the presentation of Director General Dodi Widodo first.
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister of Industry, Mr. Agus Gumiwang Kartasasmita, Honorable Minister of National Development Planning, Mr. Suharto Monoarfa, Mr. Jung Hee-taek, President of Segye Asean, Honorable Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy, Motie, the Republic of Korea, Mr. Sung Yoon-moo, Honorable Minister of Lands, Infrastructure and Transport, the Republic of Korea, Ms. Kim Hyun-mi, distinguished government official, Korean business delegation, and colleagues. My name is Dodi Widodo, Director General of Industrial Resilience, Industrial Estates, and International Access, Ministry of Industry. I am honored to have the opportunity to speak today in this forum concerning national manufacturing development and comprehensive industrial partnership of Indonesia and South Korea. In this regard, I would like to briefly speak on 6 key issues. 1. Domestic economy of industrial overview. 2. Industrial resilience, climate and market condition. 3. Recovery policies for manufacturing. 4. Incentive for investment. 5. Indonesia as a part of global value chains and hub of export. And 6. Comprehensive industrial partnership of Indonesia and South Korea. In this slide, we can see that before the COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesia had manufacturing shares of economic around 20%, higher than agriculture and below from the service sector. If saying the Korean manufacturing shares that reach 30%, we hope that Indonesian manufacturing development could also catch up with Korean development in 2035. As stated in RIPIN 2015 till 2035, after pandemic, manufacturing sectors still have the biggest proportion to the economic, 19.98%. Though in the second quarter, Q2 experienced a sharp decline to grow minus 6.90%. Chemical, pharmaceuticals and medicines, metal-based industry and paper product are 6 highest contributor among their subsectors, above 1%. Picture by slide, we do believe and optimistic that economy will rebound in the third quarter of 2020. the main key release on manufacturing sector, which is August 2020. We can see that the Purchasing Manager Index, or PMI, of Indonesia has reached 50.8 points and above other Asian countries like Vietnam, Philippines, and Malaysia. The demand depicted from online sales and motor vehicle sales also regions gains in export, particular to China, a momentum that we want to keep along with a better ease of doing business and competitiveness. To keep the momentum, Ministry of Industry composing recovery policy for industrial sector such as 1. Agro-industry, 2. Chemical, pharmacy and textile industry, and 3. Metal, machinery, transport, equipment, and electronic industry. 4. Small and medium industry, 5. Industrial estate, and the last, human resources and development. There are also some policies stipulated by Ministry of Industry as a response to industrial issues and COVID-19, which are Circular Letter of Ministry of Industry number 4, year 2020. 2. Circular Letter of Ministry of Industry number 7, year 2020. And 3. Circular Letter of Ministry of Industry number 8, year 2020. We also provide stimulus for the processing industry affected by COVID-19 outbreak that includes relaxation for import tax, income tax, value-added tax, restitution, as well as income tax allowance for individual enterprises. Additional stimulus that are being discussed by the government at the moment include energy price adjustment for both electricity and gas, credit or loan restructuring, and provision of working capital loans. In addition, the government will provide specific incentive for investment in the eastern part of Indonesia. It is important for us to enhance the economic development in these regions. Paving the way for the direct inflow of investment, basically, there are two incentives offered by the government of Indonesia in responding the effect of COVID-19 toward industry, which are 1. Fiscal incentive, 2. Non-fiscal incentive. For fiscal incentive, like we see in this slide, there are 3 incentives given such as 1. Tax holiday, 2. Tax allowance, and 3. Import duty facility. There are 10 non-fiscal incentives given by the government of Indonesia, which are 1. Human resources training, 2. Human resources certification, 3. License or patents, or 4. Protections or OFNI, certification standard for small medium industries or small medium enterprise, 6. Industry infrastructure, promotion assistance as 7. Number 8, small medium enterprise or small medium industry research and developments, 9. Intellectual property right consultation, and the last is number 10, legal consultation and assistance. Besides 2 incentives, fiscal and non-fiscal, government of Indonesia also gives some facilities for industrial estate. And for your information, there are 27 industrial estate that are being priorities for medium-term development 2020 till 2024 in Indonesia, such as 1. Kuala Tanjung, 2. Sumbawa Barat, and 3. etc. We invite you to invest in Indonesia industrial estate to take part in our industrial developments. Moreover, in order to simplify business licensing in Indonesia, Government of Indonesia provides web-based platform, namely Online Single Submission or OSS. Indonesians also have participated in Global Value Chain or GVC trade. In this slide, we can see that Indonesia is engaged with 6 trade bilateral partner countries, ASEAN and 6 ASEAN plus 1 partner countries. Indonesia keys GVC's products shifted to food and beverage, chemicals, basic metal, textile and garments. As July 2020, the 4 sectors have the highest value of export. Indonesia also became the world's 10th largest exporter of food and beverage, 3% of world total. The world's largest exporter of palm oil product with a market share above 50%. In this slide, we can see that Korea is one of the Indonesia business partner, mainly in manufacturing sector. Over the years, Indonesia and Korea continue to strengthen economic relations. Currently, most of main players of Korean industry have already invested in Indonesia, such as Samsung and POSCO, while the other has recently considered to follow invest, such as Hyundai, Lotte Chemical, and LG Chemical. It is an honor for Indonesia to be trusted as the home to those well-known companies to grow foremost in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude my presentation, we would like to say that Indonesia will continue to improve the quality of industrial-related policy for sustainable industry growth and supporting investment in Indonesia, both domestic and foreign. Having said that, I welcome recommendation for all stakeholders, especially from the Korea, to enhance our comprehensive partnership, to invest in Indonesia and other further bilateral ties. Thank you. Annyeonghaseyo. Gamsahamnida. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yes, that was Dodi Widodo. Thank you very much for that presentation. The Director General of the Industrial Resilience, Industrial Estates and International Access Ministry of Industry. Yes, manufacturing minus 6.19% drop. We heard that in Indonesia, and that's the same all around the world, I think, because of the COVID. But because of the government initiatives after August, compared to its peers, it's grown greatly and it's recovered and it's shown its resilience. So that is a very good news. And like Director General Widodo said, Indonesia is trying to foster investment, and they have tax holidays, tax incentives, and also there's a lot of fiscal policies that there are, and R&D and IP regulations. Also non-fiscal policies. There's a lot of different policies for investors that Indonesia has in place. And especially one thing that impressed me was in 2018, online one-stop platform for business registration, online single submission. It's called OSS. Through that system, business registration has become very easy in Indonesia. You can do it in hours now. That took days. So that was very impressive when I heard that. I think Korea should try to benchmark that kind of a system as well. And in Indonesia, for job creation, there's a special law on job creation. It's omnibus law. And this omnibus law is helping out foreign investors as well to induce foreign investment, and is supporting the labor market. There's about 1,200 clauses in the law, and so this law has been passed by the parliament, and it's helping greatly for the labor market. A lot of foreign investors or Korean companies as well trying to go to Indonesia. These laws will help greatly, I believe. And so Southeast Asia is a destination for our companies. In Korea, a lot of small and medium-sized business as well are thinking of going to Southeast Asia or Indonesia. But these kind of policies and climate will help out greatly, I think. We talked about it in the first session, but from 2020 to 2024, there's a lot of projects going on, and like the capital project and so forth. And so Korean companies would be keen on this. And I think that there's opportunities to be reaped, and these policies will help investors greatly. So we heard the Director General's presentation, and regarding industrial cooperation between Korea and Indonesia, we're going to go to the discussants now to hear their discussions. First, I want to hear from Lee Jae-ho, Senior Researcher at the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. Can you give us your opinions and discussion? Yes, thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much, Director General Widodo. And at Kiev, I research Indonesia. That's what I'm responsible for. I'm Lee Jae-ho. And morning and night, I think about how we can cooperate together. That's Korea and Indonesia economic cooperation fostering is my work, and this kind of forum is very welcoming to me. I thank Segye Ilbo for hosting this event. In the beginning, like I said in the introduction, at Jakarta, we have a Korean center, an embassy, and I worked there briefly. At the time when President Moon Jae-in came to Indonesia and talked about the new Southern policy and announced that, he proclaimed that. I remember that moment. So, like the U.S., Russia, and China, ASEAN is one of those superpowers. Basically, that's what it means. We're going to build diplomatic relations with ASEAN countries like Indonesia. Indonesia was the first country for us to target. So that's what it means. Through various summit discussions, what President Moon was trying to say is we want to realize more economic results and benefits. And the major results, we'll talk about that later, but the new capital construction is something that we want to talk about. A lot of Korean major companies are also entering Indonesia at this very moment, and that's another very important result, I think, from these summit talks. And just like the Director General said, the industrial cooperation that we have right now, Korea has the resources and technology, the manufacturing technology, and Indonesia has the potential for growth, a lot of resources, vast land, and young workforce, and 270 million population is the fourth in the world. Think about that. There's great potential there, and it's a great consumer market. So when we combine these two strengths of the two countries, we can reap a lot of synergistic effects. There's great benefits to be reaped. Korea's strength is 100, Indonesia's potential is 100, and when we combine that, it's not 200, it can be 300, it can be 400. That kind of synergistic effect, we need that catalyst. And when I was doing my research, the two countries' economic relationship and cooperation, the catalyst, we look at it in three folds. First, as the driving engine, the Koreans' new Southern policy, those kind of policies is the new growth engine. Indonesia is a good partner. We want to go out and make good results. We try to encourage businesses to do that. We try to help businesses branch out. Number two is mutual cooperation, bilateral cooperation, that is. And we have to improve the systems for bilateral cooperation and exchange to be fostered. One of the biggest and recent results is Korea-Indonesia SEPA, that is, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. That is one of the biggest achievements, I think, recently. Last year, it was officially signed and concluded, and once the National Assembly ratifies it, then it's into effect. So, and the next one is another thing, something that Indonesia has to prepare and be ready to absorb. As we saw in the presentation, there's a lot of investment incentives. We saw a lot of them. There's a variety of fiscal and non-fiscal incentives that are prepared by the Indonesian government, but in Korea, Indonesian economic cooperation, if we look at ASEAN, it was not a big part actually in overall ASEAN cooperation. So if we want to increase the portion of Indonesia cooperation and Korea, Indonesia has to appeal that there's a lot of good incentives for Korean companies. Or, compared to the past, some kind of improved incentives should be provided. You have to appeal that to Korean companies. Asian companies tend to be modest, and they don't like to appeal their strengths sometimes. But this is all about marketing. It's a form of marketing, so you have to actively appeal the incentives that you have in place to the Korean companies. And also, in that respect, we talked about OSS, but in the case of OSS, it's a very good case, I believe. OSS is a very good case example. I'm sorry, there's some mobile phone going off. Can you please keep it silent? It's at the pillar. It's my mobile phone, but I think something is going off there, so. OSS, the business registration process was slow in the past in Indonesia, and that was a difficulty that many investors face. So I think in this government of Indonesia, they reformed that, and this is a very good result, the OSS. You have to actively appeal this system, and you have to market yourselves, I think. This was my comments. Now let me ask my question now. The moderator earlier mentioned this, but in Indonesia, one of the hottest issues is omnibus law. And a lot of investors are actually curious about this omnibus law. Indonesia business and labor law, because there's some distance or difference. A lot of business owners know that they have to be compliant with the law. Yeah, that's obvious. We have to be in compliance, but sometimes there's some friction. It's been true that there's some friction with the law sometimes. But this omnibus law helps out in that respect. I heard that it's been passed in Indonesia. But with the Korean investors, with this law, what kind of investment environment change can we expect? If somebody can explain that briefly, it would be very nice. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Now, let me summarize what you just said.
So the omnibus law he asked about, that was his question. It's a very revolutionary law. It's a very impressive law that was recently passed. And so the basic content is the business owners or in the business process, if there's some violation of law, they can be assisted. It's a law that assists in those kind of compliance issues. And the researcher Lee Jae-ho, the discussant, said that this law, his question was, especially this law, what's its meaning for foreign investors? What will happen to foreign investors because of this law? That's his question. What will change for investors because of this law? That was his question. And the answer to this, Indonesia will answer this question.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
안녕하세요.
Annyeonghaseyo. Selamat siang. Kalau tadi moderator menyampaikan dan penanggap menyampaikan salah satu yang harus menjadi perhatian pemerintah Korea dalam kebijakannya New Short Bond Policy. Salah satu yang ditanggapi adalah Indonesia. 야.
모데라토 통해서 인도네시아 정부가 유념해야 할
So the Indonesian government should be wary of some points like the moderator pointed out. Let me talk about that.
Indonesia adalah surga bagi investor termasuk Korea Selatan.
What I can tell you is that Indonesia is making a good climate, a heaven for foreign investors. That's what we are creating for the foreign investors. I can say that with confidence. From Korea, we're going to roll out a red carpet for all the Korean companies wanting to invest in Indonesia.
Indonesia telah melakukan reformasi besar-besaran di dalam kebijakan secara keseluruhan dengan Omnibus Law.
And like we mentioned earlier, the omnibus law, we have passed that legislation in Indonesia. And this is a revolutionary move. We've mentioned that already.
Omnibus Law adalah salah satu wujud nyata dari tekad pemerintah untuk menciptakan iklim usaha yang lebih kondusif dan menarik dan menciptakan surga investasi bagi kawan-kawan yang tertarik berinvestasi di Indonesia.
This omnibus law that was passed, it's to make a better business environment. And it's the expression of the government to make that favorable business climate for investors. Many investors can invest and do business easily in Indonesia now with this omnibus law.
Salah satu perubahan yang paling berpengaruh dalam Omnibus Law adalah memberikan kemudahan pada investor, terutama kami berfokus pada perizinan yang sebelumnya kita membagi perizinan itu dalam skala industri kecil, menengah maupun besar.
이번에
The focus of the omnibus law is to invest in Indonesia. And if you want to continue to invest and do business in Indonesia, in the past there was a lot of regulations and restrictions, but we're trying to streamline those regulations to make it easy for businesses, not only big conglomerates, but to small and medium-sized businesses as well. This will help out greatly.
Dalam Omnibus Law yang nanti dan sedang kita susun, model perizinannya akan berbasis resiko, di mana resiko itu untuk resiko rendah cukup mendaftar.
이번에 제정된 옴니버스 법도
The omnibus law that was recently passed, as well as that, there's also many decrees and ordinances that are passed, and risk-based approach is what we are taking. So is it a high-risk industry, a mid-risk industry, or low-risk? According to that, the procedures will be different. So we're taking a risk-based approach.
Berbasis resiko itu berbasis dari K3L, keselamatan, kesehatan, keamanan, dan lingkungan.
제가 아까 잠깐 이제 잊어버렸는데
I forgot to mention something, but the risk-based approach method, if I can add something, some 3KL. So it's health, safety, and welfare. These three are the pillars. So that's the criteria to rate the risk of each company.
Yang berisiko rendah hanya cukup mendaftar, tapi yang berisiko sedang atau menuju ke berisiko tinggi itu harus ada perizinan yang berdasarkan komitmen dan standar.
So the small and medium-sized businesses that I mentioned earlier and low-risk businesses in these criteria, if they just register their business, they can immediately start to operate. But the high-risk businesses, once you register on OSS, there might be some other necessary procedures that you have to go through. Certain authorizations or licenses have to be granted for high-risk businesses.
Risiko tinggi tentunya akan ada dilengkapi dengan izin yang lebih harus
But one thing is for sure, even the high-risk businesses, of course, there's high risk associated, and there's a lot of special licenses and authorizations that you must have, and that's obvious.
Bagi yang rendah itu cukup nanti mendaftar, dia langsung bisa beroperasi. Bagi yang menengah.
So in summary, For small businesses, you have to register, and you can do business immediately. Start your operations for those low-risk small businesses.
hanya cukup memenuhi standar.
For mid-risk businesses, you register, and then there's some basic, simple approvals that you must get. But then right away you can operate.
Antaranya melalui OSS, Online Single Submissions.
And all of this is taking place on OSS, the Online Single Submission. So there's a web platform, OSS, that you can do. You register, get approvals, all on this one-stop single system.
Ini memang sedang disusun, tapi arahnya nanti kami pastikan akan memudahkan semua investor dari semua tingkatan.
And along with this new legislation that we passed, we're preparing the ordinance right now. But what I can say for sure is that in the near future, this will come into effect. And to foreign investors, it will help and ease the way you can do business in Indonesia. And I think this is my answer to the omnibus law question, and I think it's sufficient. Secretary General Widodo, thank you very much for that answer.
Now, based on the comments that we've just heard, it seems that investment in Indonesia would be very welcome, to the point where they will be rolling out the red carpet. I think that's a great expression to hear, and would be welcome news for SMEs in Korea. Especially with the introduction of the ordinances, health, safety, and welfare, unless we have issues in those sectors, they said they would allow the business operations right away. So once the ordinances for this omnibus law comes into effect, it would be great for the Korean companies to have all the preparations in place so that they can make the investments right away. Are there any other questions that you might want to have answered?
사실 이 옴니버스 법안에 대해서는 작년부터
This omnibus law, a lot of people had interest in this from last year, but we were always wondering, when will the ordinance be released? And so we're waiting a lot for this, but when do you think you will finish the ordinance and release that? Yes, so when will the ordinance be out? That's the question. When do you plan to finish that and announce the ordinance? Well, my understanding is there should be a few, but...
Pertanyaan mereka, Pak, setelah dari undang-undang Omnibus sudah lolos dari DPR, sekarang tinggal pengumuman dari Pak Presiden, terus mereka tanya kira-kira peraturan pelaksanaan, baik PP, terus itu peraturan pemerintah, kira-kira kapan itu disiapkan dan dilaksanakan. Pertanyaan mereka begitu.
Kami saat ini, hari ini waktu saya sangat terbatas karena hari ini juga saya sedang membahas turunan tersebut. Sehingga mungkin saya tidak bisa berlama-lama di sini karena saya harus mengerjakan turunan yang Bapak-Bapak tunggu. As soon as possible kami akan segera mengumumkan apabila telah selesai. Hari ini saya sedang menyusun itu.
So actually today is a very busy day. After this conference I have to leave, and what I have to take care of is the ordinance that we talked about. I have to prepare for that. My work focuses on that right now. So anyway, as soon as possible, we will get the ordinance released. And so you don't have to worry too much. It's going to be done quickly. I don't know Indonesian language that well, but I heard as soon as possible. That's what I heard from the Secretary General, as soon as possible. So that's what the Director General said. Next, we'll talk with CEO Moon Gi-bong.
대표님의 질의 및 토론이 있겠습니다. 부탁드리겠습니다. 위도도 국장님께서 이제 레드
Mr. Widodo, you've mentioned the red carpet being rolled out.
한국과 인도네시아 간의 비즈니스
And I believe this is great news for companies, Korean companies that are interested in investing in Indonesia. In fact, for me personally, it's one of the most welcome news I've heard today. Cooperation in the field of investment between our two countries
해외 투자는 이제 인도네시아로 진행됐었기 때문에요.
has been well established. In fact, Indonesia is one of our top destinations for foreign investment.
처음에 이제 진행할 때는
So we are receiving even more good news on top of that. First of all, you mentioned forestry and also manufacturing in labor-intensive industries. Now, during the third phase, large-scale investments in factories or plants have been made. Now, this year, with the investment from Hyundai Motor Company, I think we have entered the phase 4.0, which means that Korean companies are not just entering the Indonesian market and end it there. They are now forging collaborative ties throughout the supply chain with Indonesian suppliers for even closer cooperation between our two countries. Now, you've mentioned briefly before, but Indonesia is taking great interest in electric vehicles, and that one of your aspirations is to become the global hub for electric vehicles. In order to manufacture such vehicles, you would need the secondary battery cells, and in order to make those batteries, you would require the mineral nickel, which Indonesia has large reserves of. So in that context, I would like to pose this question. The Indonesian government is really interested in promoting all these aspects of manufacturing electric vehicles, in connecting this value chain and putting it in place. What kind of strategies do you have on a governmental level? Could you elaborate on that, please? Mr. Moon, let me summarize the question by Mr. Moon. Indonesia has ambitious plans to become a hub for electric vehicles. And as we all know, nickel, there's a large reserve of nickel in Indonesia. So if they can convert nickel into a valuable resource that can be leveraged by the electric vehicle industry, what kind of strategies or tactics would have to be put in place by the Indonesian government to make that happen?
Oke, terima kasih kalau Hyundai sudah ingin menginvestasikan investasinya terkait mobil listrik di Indonesia.
Hyundai Motor Company has decided to make investments for. If it is true that Hyundai Motor Company has decided to make investments in the electric vehicle sector in Indonesia, that would be most welcome news. At present, the Indonesian program has a couple of programs, and one of those is the low emission program.
Dalam low carbon vehicle program tersebut ada berbasis bahan bakar, ada berbasis mobil hibrid, ada berbasis mobil listrik. Jadi kita lakukan sama semua dan kita mengarah ke low carbon emission vehicle.
As I've mentioned earlier, the low emission program, within this program, we have an initiative involving the use of gasoline, traditional conventional fuels, and also hydrogen-powered vehicles. That is what the Indonesian government is planning for.
Ke depan, mereka akan beriringan semua program ini, dan bagaimana dengan Hyundai yang menginvestasikan mobil listrik? Mobil listrik ke depan adalah salah satu prospek yang bagus.
이 세 가지 업종이
So
각각
these three sectors within the industry
인도네시아 아까 LCEV 그 프로그램에 맞춰서
would have to take
특별히
into account
현재
the LCEV program.
전기
In
자동차를
particular,
하기로 했으면
if
전기
Hyundai Motor
자동차를
Company has
통해서
decided to make
어떻게
an investment in this
저탄소
sector,
배출
then
프로그램
I believe the
이것에
low
따를 것인가
emission
그렇게 이제
program
각자가
would
이제
have to be considered
공부하고
too. The company would have to
진행을
make
해야
a
됩니다.
decision whether to align themselves with that
Indonesia
program.
memang memiliki dan kaya di dalam bahan baku untuk baterai listriknya. Sehingga apabila Hyundai tertarik investasi di sini dan tunggu bersama kami, silakan.
특별히 인도네시아는 여러분들이 잘
As you are all
아시다시피
aware,
니켈을 포함한
Indonesia has rich reserves of rare minerals, including nickel,
그래서 이제 배터리 사업에 굉장히
which is very conducive for the battery industry.
우월한 점을
It gives us a competitive advantage in that sector. So if we are trying to promoting the electric vehicle sector, I think it would be a great asset for
Tidak hanya
us.
memikirkan bagaimana mobil listrik atau baterai saja, tapi bagaimana kita mempersiapkan ekosistem secara keseluruhan. Dan ini memerlukan waktu.
전기 자동차 같은 경우는
In the case of
단순하게
electric
어떤
vehicles,
전기 문제,
it's not just about the electric power or about batteries. We also have to take into account the environmental implications to make sure that they are environment friendly.
네, 국장님 설명 자세한 설명.
Thank you for your detailed explanation.
전기차 같은 경우에는
In the case of electric vehicles, I believe that batteries play a key role.
우리나라 같은 경우에 이제
In Korea,
1위의 시장 점유율을 가지고
Korea has the largest market share in this sector, and Hyundai Motor Company
수소차까지 지금 열심히 개발을 하고 있는데
has been developing these vehicles in addition to hydrogen-powered cars. So if we can combine that competitiveness of Korean companies with the rich mineral reserves of Indonesia, I am sure that it would be a power combination that will allow us to foray into even more markets around the world. So once again, thank you for your comments. And if Mr. Moon has some additional questions, please.
네, 그러면 제가 간단한 질문 한번
So let me wrap up by one last question.
지금 그 국장님 발표 자료 중에서 8페이지
If you look at page 8 of your presentation material, it talks about financial incentives, especially tax allowance to be offered to foreign investors. And there are industries that are eligible for this kind of benefit. They are highly labor intensive, utilizing local content, and there are some other criteria as well. Do you have more detailed criteria that could be a reference for companies, or would you be reviewing cases each on their respective merits?
Okay, the last question, yeah, I answer because I must leave this forum because I must I already have my ministry call me. Okay, I want to answer. Sesuai dengan peraturan pemerintah nomor 78 tahun 2019 dan peraturan Menteri Perindustrian nomor 47 tahun 2019, insentif fiskal tax allowance berupa pengurangan penghasilan neto sebesar 30% dari jumlah penanaman modal dan dibebankan selama 6 tahun, masing-masing 5% per tahun dengan kriteria dan persyaratan industri sebagai berikut. Satu, memiliki.
sebentar ya.
Oke.
인도네시아 그 규정에 의하면
Under the regulations of Indonesia,
제78호와
the ordinance is number 78 of 2019
제47호에 의하면
and number 47 of 2012.
총수자 30% 순이익에 대한 소득세 감면 조치가 있고
A tax break will be offered for 30% of the corporate income.
이것을 신청하려면
And in order to apply for this benefit,
아래와 같습니다.
you would have to meet certain criteria.
Kriteria yang bisa menerima ini adalah satu, investasi yang tinggi atau untuk ekspor.
첫 번째
First
조건은
condition
투자액이 높아야 되고요, 많아야
is
되고.
that the investment
그다음에
amount
이
has to be
사업이
big,
수출 목적인
and it has to
사업이어야
be
되는
an
게 첫 번째
export-oriented business. That's the first criterion that needs to be met.
Penyerapan tenaga kerjanya besar.
이 업종이 많은 노동 인력을
The business would also have to create a lot of jobs so that this can be achieved by being labor intensive.
Kandungan dalam negeri yang tinggi.
그리고 이 업체가 가능하면
And if
인도네시아
possible, the
로컬
company
제품들, 원료 이런 것부터 기계
should
이런 것에서 이제 로컬 제품을
be using a
많이
lot of
사용하는
local
그런
materials or
업체들에게
products.
이런 혜택을 줄 수 있습니다. 수다.
오케이.
예, 이상입니다.
네,
That's all.
네, 국장님 답변 감사드립니다.
Thank you for your response, and thank you for joining us today despite your busy schedule.
좋은 말씀해 주신 데 다시 한번
Your insights have been very helpful. I'm sure you're very busy, so we'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah. 네, 여러분 보신 바와 같이 우리 이제 이번 세션에서는
Now, during this session, we will talk about the industrial infrastructure in Indonesia and measures to promote industrial cooperation between our two countries.
우리 이재호 연구원님과 문기봉 대표님의 토론을 들으셨습니다.
That was the topic of this session. And let us wrap up this session by saying that Indonesia is striving to move into the next chapter of its industrial development. And what's most noteworthy are policies like OSS or reform in order to lure more foreign investment. These examples have been very impressive. So I think Korean corporations, whether large or small, would take great interest in these incentives when they implement their own strategies. Once again, thank you for taking part in this session. Let's give them a warm round of applause for having participated in the second session. Now we will move on to the third session, which will be covering the topic of the prospect and challenges of developing a new economic capital of Indonesia. Now, the project is led by a private company. So we will have the same moderator, Kim Yoon-young, the head of the LHA, and personnel from the insurance corporation will also be joining the discussion panel. Mr. Frank Sun has an MBA from the University of Wuhan in China. He is the Vice President of Industrial Development. Professor Kang Byung-tae, we have already covered his profile a bit earlier, so I will pass on that. And Mr. Kim Yoon-young has worked at Samsung Securities and is now working for LH, covering a wide range of departments. And Mr. Baek Seung-taek is the Director of Plant Finances. He has led the offices in Paris as well as in Chungnam Province.
네, 감사합니다. 제2 세션에 이어서
So following on the second session, we will move to the third session. And this session is about the prospects and challenges in developing a new economic capital in Indonesia. This might be a bit of an unfamiliar topic to all of you, but Indonesia is considering moving their economic capital to Kalimantan and reserving Jakarta as their administrative capital. So Mr. Frank Sun from CFLD will be giving us a presentation regarding this topic. After his presentation, we will move on to the discussion part. So let's take a look at.
안녕하세요. Thank you, Mr. Jun Hee-taek. Your Excellency, Mr. Sun Yang-mo, Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy. Your Excellency, Ms. Kim Hae-mi, Minister of Land, Infrastructure, Transport from the Republic of Korea. And also from the Republic of Indonesia, Your Excellency, Mr. Agus Gumiwang Kartasamita, Minister of Industry. Your Excellency, Mr. Suharto Manoaf, Minister of National Development Planning, and Mr. Dodi Widodo, General Director from Ministry of Industry of Indonesia. Distinguished government officials and the Korean delegation, ladies and gentlemen, as a company that has developed in Indonesia for 5 years, CFLD have invested 2 new industry city projects and obtained more than 2,000 hectares of land resource in Indonesia. Today, I will share our experience of investing in Indonesia, especially the changes in infrastructure construction in the Greater Jakarta area. In the first part, let me introduce the investment situation of the Korean companies in Indonesia. As Indonesia's long-term partnership for trading, Korea's investment in Indonesia ranks among the top 5. In terms of location area, more than 60% of the Korean company choice surrounding of the Greater Jakarta area in between 2017 and 2020. In terms of the industry sectors, FDI from Korea is more concentrated in electronics, medical device industries, accounting for 29%. And in terms of total amount of investment by countries, Korea leads the United States and ranks 5th in Indonesia FDI. In terms of the project numbers, a total of 6,970 investment projects were invested in Korea in the past 3 years, ranking number 4. From this chart, it can be seen that from the past few years, Korean investment in Indonesia was mainly concentrated in 3 different regions: Greater Jakarta, Central Java, and East Java, especially of the Greater Jakarta region, which accounted for more than 60%. Especially in 2018, was the most concentrated investment year in Greater Jakarta. Korea's first 5 investment sectors in Indonesia are mainly in electronics and medical device equipment, textile, chemical, pharmaceutical, and infrastructure fields such as electricity, natural gas, and water resource, as well as the metal industry. In Greater Jakarta, especially the Bekasi to Karawang area in the east of Jakarta, when Korean companies are most located, especially electronics and automotive industry. Korean experts are among the biggest foreign community in Indonesia, more than 60,000 Koreans living and working in Indonesia. Why so many overseas investors are attracted to invest in Indonesia? We will introduce one by one from the market, policy, and the infrastructure environment to the entrepreneurs. Indonesia is the largest country in Southeast Asia, with the 4th largest population in the world, reaching 270 million. Under the leadership of President Jokowi, the economic growth rate in 2018 and 2019 are stabilized at more than 5.2%. It received the Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's rating with stable and investment opportunity. Very young population structure. More than 50% of the population is under the age of 30. The growing population ensures the competitive labor cost and rapidly growing consumer market. Globally, among the G20 large economies, Indonesia ranks top 3 high-growth countries. In the past 5 years, I have also deeply experienced the reforming determination and speed of the Indonesian government. The government promoted digitalization and paperless approval, with the goal of creating a faster, more transparent, more simplified, and one-stop service system. Since 2015, the OSS system, which is the online approval system, has been implemented. through one online submission by enterprise, all government approval procedure can be completed. The time-limited commitments are strictly followed, and the bottlenecks are handled centrally. Not only the investment registration process, but also the factory construction process, the Indonesia government have also adopted approval and authorization for the industry parks, especially with standard contracting safety approval procedure. After the industry park's environmental impact analysis is completed, the construction can be started while applying for government approval. The above two policies have greatly reduced the time from registration to start of the construction. In our park, it has achieved a high efficiency for only 8 weeks from the start of foreign investment registration to groundbreaking. In physical policy, Indonesia government have launched a series of fiscal and tax reform for foreign investment, giving foreign investment many tax incentives. More than 100 industries have received the income tax expansion for the 6 years. In the beginning of the new FDI investment, there will be 2 or 4 years of tax-free for imported equipment and material. Also, special tax incentive encourage companies to invest in employee training and technology R&D. Since 2018, for 18 pioneer industries that are suitable for Indonesia's key development direction, government have reduced the corporate income tax by 100% based on a tax holiday up to 20 years. For the energy sector, Indonesia has its oil and natural gas production advantage. By reducing the cost of natural gas to $6 per MMBTU in 2020, which will greatly benefit petrochemical, steel, ceramics, glass, and rubber processing sectors. Indonesia is a country with a very friendly foreign trade policy. It's a permanent seat for the ASEAN Secretariat. It's not only a free trade area with ASEAN countries, but also has free trade agreement with Korea, Japan, China, Europe, Australia, Indonesia, India, and other countries, which is very convenient to set up global manufacturing center. In 2020, Indonesia government will continue to promote reforming. Omnibus law, which is under intensive discussing, also have determined reforming action. It have taken an important step in simplifying the legal conflict, improving administrative efficiency, and reducing the corporate boundaries. The introduction of the new laws will greatly simplify the existing administration approval procedure and unify the different regulations. It has laid a legal foundation for reducing FDI costs, encouraging investment, supporting innovation, and increasing infrastructure investment. The investment incentive law has a very positive effect on Indonesia's infrastructure improvement, especially in the Greater Jakarta area, where overseas investors are intensively investing. Indonesia has 59% of its GDP generated from the island of Java, of which 35% comes from Greater Jakarta. Korean entrepreneurs who have been to Indonesia may be familiar with Jakarta and the surrounding West Java and Banten province. Because of the private ownership of land, its area are also very traffic jam. For Greater Jakarta, especially the industry corridor from Bekasi to Karawang, the Indonesia government have launched 7 major infrastructure improvement projects. The Jakarta-Cikampek Southern No. 2 toll road, which will be completed in 2023, will provide parallel traffic route for the entire Jakarta Eastern Industrial Corridor. This project was approved in December 2017 and is currently 27% completed. The project is constructed in 3 stages, starting from the Jatash in the south of Jakarta to Sadang in the east of Karawang, which just happens to link the entire industrial corridor from the south. Jakarta No. 2 Outer Ring Road will depart from the airport, collect the entire perimeter of Jakarta, and collect it directly from Cibidong to Tanjung Priok Port, which speed up shipping time. The project east parts have basically been completed, and the west parts from Sabang to Balaraja is currently under construction. It's expected to be open by end of 2021. Jakarta-Bandung High-Speed Railway, which has been planning to build the 4th station, which are Jakarta Halim Airport Station, Karawang Station, Walini Station, and Bandung Station. Currently, 56 of the construction is completed, and is expected to officially complete in 2022. After the completion of this project, it will only take 15 minutes from downtown Jakarta to Karawang New Industry City. With the Jakarta Metro official operation start in 2018, Jakarta is currently planning a complete railway transit network in Greater Jakarta. The network will form a complete transportation system through MRT Phase 1, Phase 2, LRT 9, 1, 2, 3, and commuter trains with surrounding suburbs. The existing Tanjung Priok port is basically being operating at full capacity. Indonesia government are also hurried to complete Jakarta's second largest port, Palembang Deep Sea Port. The Phase 1 will be start using at the end of 2020. All projects will be completed in 2027. 93% of the road connecting to the port have been completed. Since 2021 quarter 1st, a new highway will be built directly to the port. These photos are the construction site of the Palembang Deep Sea Port. In 2018, Kertajati International Airport was also start operation in Majalengka County in the eastern part of Greater Jakarta. In the future, 3 airports will form aviation pattern in Greater Jakarta with Halim and Soekarno-Hatta Airport. In the industry infrastructure, through the construction of denser natural gas pipeline network, it will provide more clean, low-cost energy. In order to meet the investment of more manufacturing projects, a series of the new power plant will be built on Java Island. The pictures show the new commissioned Java No. 2 natural gas power plant and Java No. 8 power plant. The government encouraged more engineering training institutes to educate more skilled workers, as to reserve talents for electronics, automobile, and other high-tech industries. Although the minimum wage in Greater Jakarta already reached $300, but it's the biggest skilled, experienced talent pool in Indonesia. More than 15,000 manufacturing companies located here, and more than 2 million industrial workers living here. Korea, Japan, and China also have a large number of industry parks investing here. Our Karawang New Industry City, also located in the center of this industry corridor, only 2 kilometers away from Karawang High-Speed Railway Station. Karawang New Industry City will build high-standard infrastructure focusing on pharmaceutical, food and beverage, automobile part, electronics, logistics, and warehousing industry. To provide entrepreneurs with a one-stop service platform, from FDI registration, construction design, engineering supervision, recruitment, to bonded factory declaration, food and drug certification, and other service with one-stop service 24-hour support. I wish all the Korean entrepreneurs a smooth investment journey in Indonesia. Indonesia EU, Washington, hanya abdinda. 감사합니다.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Frank Sun. He's a vice president of CFLD. One of the most impressive things that he mentioned is that it would only take about 8 weeks from investment to construction. When I was making investments in Vietnam, I was also impressed by the government policies that ensured that the entire process would be smooth and fast. So this is very welcome news, especially so since Korean companies are investing a lot in the broader Jakarta area. I've been to Jakarta myself, and I have noticed that the traffic is quite heavy. But once all these new infrastructure are built, I'm sure that access in terms of transport will become more favorable and make investment opportunities more enticing for foreign companies. So if you have any comments or questions regarding the presentation that we've just heard, please feel free to pose them. Mr. Kim Yoon-young will be joining us in the discussion, and Mr. Baek Seung-taek as well. So I would also like to ask that you pose simple questions. So, Mr. Kim, please. Hello, my name is Kim Yoon-young, and I am in charge of the projects in Indonesia. First, I would like to thank Mr. Frank Sun for his wonderful presentation. LH, let me just briefly go over what LH is as an organization. It fleshes out the policies that are developed by the government. The government is very interested in promoting economic cooperation, but private corporations are usually more driven by profitability. Now, LH acts as a middle ground between these two sectors, so to speak. One thing I would like to draw Mr. Frank Sun's attention to is that unlike the government-owned corporations in China, LH has grown through very favorable and sometimes exclusive incentives offered to the organization by the government. So let me briefly make a comment regarding the transfer of the new capital. We would like to offer our support to the government initiative, especially since we do have experience in working on a similar project in Korea. In Karawang, near Karawang, there is a Bukhashi region, and that region is an area where we're considering cooperation for. We are also preparing for offering consultation services to housing projects in that region. The Karawang region is a very attractive candidate for us to consider as an investment destination. So I really look forward to furthering our discussions on that topic with Mr. Frank Sun. My question is, the way we go about our projects is first to take on the risk of land acquisition. As for the approval required from the government, if it's an international corporation, then the administration process often becomes more complicated. So we hope that these processes can be streamlined. Companies like LH, I hope, can receive a bit of favorable treatment in terms of these administrative processes because we have a guaranteed presence and capability. We would have to review what kind of projects would be most favorable in terms of strategy when developing a certain industrial area or a new capital. Lastly, this was mentioned during the presentation. You mentioned the new port and new airport. Now, I have no doubt that the infrastructure in Karawang will continue to improve over the years. But if you have more information, especially regarding these projects, it would be of great help if you could share them with us. So one thing I'd like to suggest is that organizations like CFLD and Korean organizations like LH will have great opportunities for further cooperation. So I would like to kindly urge you to perhaps present us with some specific proposals. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 우리 김윤영 단장님
Thank you, Mr. Kim. I think his question was about first, land must be secured first in order for business to start. So would CFLD be able to help us in acquiring the necessary approvals in acquiring the land? Secondly, regarding the Karawang new city, what kind of businesses would be most promising? And thirdly, in eastern or broader Jakarta area, there are new infrastructure being developed. Do you have any additional details regarding these projects?
Thanks, Mr. Kim. So firstly, it's very glad to see a lot of the Korean companies very interesting to invest in Indonesia, especially with the experience for industry development and also have the capital strength to investment. It's true, in Indonesia, the land acquisition is a very difficult foundation of the development. The reason is Indonesia, 99% of the land is private ownership. All the land for infrastructure development, for residential and township development, and for industry park development, we need facing a large quantity of acquisition, case by case negotiation with the farmers or local landowners. So that is the big challenge. How to solve that? Firstly, in CFLD, when we started this journey in Indonesia in 2016, we firstly do a deep analysis with the local government and the central government about the land ownership, the law and also the regulations. We found out it's very hard for a foreign investor directly to acquisition land, case by case from the farmer. So we find a local partner as the landowners to start acquisition land. And in CFLD, we are glad to see we find a very good Indonesian partner, Agung Podomoro Land Corporation, and also the Alam Sutra Group as our two projects partnership. Currently, we have a total more than 3,000 hectare land acquisition in Indonesia. So this kind of the big land bank, we were divided into phases to start development. We are invited to foreign investor, especially for the Korean investors, because in Korea, we can see a lot of experience for the science park, for the industry innovation. Similar like when I start my journey in industry development, the first case I study is the Dadak Science Park in Korea. So that is a very successful policy development. So this kind of experience, like from Singapore or from Japan, already success the local project in Indonesia. So land resource is not a very big problem, but should be carefully looked. I believe the big company like LH, we can cooperation together, pay CFLD group to help for the local knowledge and the local resource, and we can working together as the land ownership in the Indonesia. So that's not a big question, but partnership and the local realization about the legal and the financial due diligence is necessary. Secondly, is about the Indonesia's business for the Karawang or other locations. I believe a lot of the researches have done in Korea, but from my personal experience in the last 5 years working in Indonesia, I think there are two trends still continuing and happening in Indonesia. First is the increasing of the local consuming. Indonesia is a large population, 570 million populations in this country, and also half of this population is less than 30 years old. So that means a lot of the growing consumption in all the food, beverage, in the personal care, chemical, in the pharmaceutical, and also a lot of the daily transportation device. So this kind of the consuming industries will be keep growing. Secondly is about the import replacement. Indonesia is a country with great resource. Just now we discussed about the battery resource for electronic vehicle. But Indonesia still have a lot of the resource like the palm oil, like the rubbers, and also the local manufacturing have very strong in the pharmaceutical and also in the local textile industries. The cheap labor, the strong consuming, making Indonesia is a great market and also the great manufacturer base in Southeast Asia. To support this kind of the infrastructure, I think we can discussing again with the infrastructures, especially in the eastern area of the Greater Jakarta. We can see a lot of the Korean talents already set up their manufacturing base in Greater Jakarta, especially in the Bekasi Karawang corridor. This corridor is the Indonesia's manufacturing center. That's why so important Indonesia government investment 7 major infrastructure in this area in the last 2 years. From the last year, the traffic jam can be solved because in end of last year, especially the December 15th, elevated toll start to using. This elevated toll is taking almost 3 years to construction, and this will reduce 30% of the Jakarta-Cikampek traffic, especially the traffic from Jakarta to Bandung or Jakarta to Karawang. And the passenger car and the container car trucks will be divided from the elevated toll and the normal toll. On the south end of this industry corridor, we can see another high-speed toll road is under construction. That is Jakarta-Cikampek dual toll, the south toll. This south toll, we can see the manufacturing corridor is just between the north Jakarta-Cikampek toll and also the second south toll. So this project we are divided into 3 different phases. The first phase already started to development. 27% already finished. Because the land acquisition difficulty, the construction starts from the further of Jakarta to the closer of Jakarta. So this is the developing process of this Jakarta-Cikampek source. Besides of the Jakarta-Cikampek source, outer side of the ring road also constructed. In the eastern area from the port Tanjung Priok to the eastern manufacturing corridor, this road already finished. On the western, from Balaraja to Serpong, and the future Balaraja to the airport Soekarno-Hatta also will be done. Currently, we target to finish this project in end of 2021. So after this road system start to using, all the transportation from the existing Tanjung Priok port can directly access to Bekasi Karawang corridor. But although the Tanjung Priok port is very important and the second biggest port in South Asia behind of Singapore port, but it's already full occupied. On the location of 100 kilometers eastern to Jakarta, there is a new port. The Palembang Deep Sea Port is under construction. This port will be finished the first phase in end of this year. So that is great news for this Palembang. This port just started 2 years construction since 2018. Considering this year's slow construction impact with the coronavirus, it's very fast speed. And for the phase 1 of this port, 36% of the traffic value will focus on the container cargo, and the 68 will focus on the car fleet transportation, the complete build-up cash, especially considering the Hyundai's new car manufacturing plant in Cikarang will start to operation in next year. So Hyundai and other car manufacturers can directly export their finished production to Southeast Asia and other countries. This port we are considering most important this kind of the logistic center for the Bekasi, Karawang, and also for Banten district and Greater Jakarta. So this will reduce all the traffic from the eastern corridor to Jakarta downtown. And we consider in the future 2 years, there will be 2 million units of the finished car manufacturer will export or import through the new Palembang Deep Sea Port. And this port will be divided into 3 phases. After the phase 3 finish, there will be 7.5 million TEU standard containers transportation capacity for whole Palembang port. So this one we are looking for in end of this year. Phase 1 will start launching to operation. Besides of the Palembang's layout, we can see there is also the connecting road is under construction and almost ready. The first road is directly connect from the existing country road to Palembang port. 99% almost finished. We are start operation same as the port phase 1. And we can see from the Google Satellite map and also the on-site picture, the collecting zone is almost finished and ready. And the phase 2 will be a high-speed toll road directly connect to the Balinban port phase 1. This is some photos taken by in this August and also September. We can see end of this year, this port almost is ready to use. Besides of the port and the high toll road, we can see another most important infrastructure is about the power and
네,
energy.
부사님 그 주소.
Indonesia is a natural advantage resource
I'm
country
very sorry,
with the
Mr. Frank.
natural oil and the gas.
Mr.
Recent
Frank.
years, Indonesia is focused on the investment on the natural gas pipeline. There is a lot of the new pipelines in Banten and West Java province.
I'm sorry, Mr. Frank.
16 different gas pipelines invested. This will help all the manufacturing capacity to reduce the cost for the energy. And also for the power supply, in order to support for the increasing the manufacturing and also the consumption, in Java Island, we have more power plant using the natural gas or the corn. But the Indonesia government also encourage more with the clean power, like solar power, will be encouraged by the government subsidies.
Mr. Frank,
So,
can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but because we don't have much time, so we have another question. So, 예, 답변 잘 들었고요. 너무 전문가.
Very much. You're very expertise in this matter, so I had to cut you off. I'm sorry for that because we don't have time. Because of time restraints, I think we have to go to the next question actually, but thank you very much for that. So the next discussant is from K-Sure, Baeksung Tech. Yes, thank you very much. I'm from the Korea Trade Insurance Corporation, Plant Financing Director. I'm Baeksung Tech. Before my question, I would like to tell you about what we do in Indonesia, and after that, I'll ask the question. In 1992, we were established, and we're to facilitate trade and provide credit to companies doing trade overseas. So that's what we're for. When our companies go overseas, there's a lot of risks that need to be covered. Financial support is needed for plant construction or so forth. And that's what we do. And then for midterm projects with the importing country, we also provide support as well, and the importing companies, we provide support too. Let's say if there's a big project in Indonesia government and government officials, and their private sector sponsors as well. Well, to K-Sure, we can support you as well. Of course, there are certain conditions. You have to purchase Korean content. That's the condition. And so from the 1990s, we have an office in Indonesia. And there's a few big projects in Indonesia that our corporation has done. In 2012, POSCO Steel, there was a plant project. We supported that project. And in 2016, the gas power plant in Indonesia as well, the Indonesia Power generator, they did that plant, and we supported that with Korean companies. And then Jawa coal plant as well. We did that. So a lot of power plant projects we supported in Indonesia. And in the future, in our corporation, we're trying to do more infrastructure work. I think Indonesia will need financing in its infrastructure projects. And Vice President Frank Sun gave us a good presentation, but the investment climate and situation in Indonesia, it helped us understand a lot. Thank you very much for the presentation. Well, my question here is, with the new capital, or the new economic capital near Jakarta, I think you will need a lot of resources, and to get that financing or to get the resources, what's your plan? Can you explain that a little bit? How are you going to get the resources or financing for it? So this was Baeksung Tech from K-Sure, and his question is about infrastructure projects, how to get the financing for that. So Frank, about 10 minutes I can give you. Can you answer that in around 10 minutes? Or 5 minutes, rather? Because we don't have much time.
The Korean investors is very familiar with the Indonesian market. And all these two questions very sharp for land and finance. Finance is another challenge we're facing, and I think is another opportunity for the Korean investor to seeking on the Indonesia market. Because in Indonesia, the interest rate of the development law for the infrastructure and also for the other like the residential or township facilities is still very high. The average interest for the normal investment is around 10% based on the this exchange rate. Most of the industry parks and also the infrastructure developers in Indonesia seeking JV with the international investor for cheaper financial cost. Similar like CFLD, we are seeking the financial support from Singapore and Hong Kong to reduce our cost. I believe in the Indonesia development, a lot of the Korean financial organization can take the major role in Indonesia. Recent years, Indonesia is more open with the foreign bank. I can see the Coming Bank, Shinhan Bank already set up a lot of branches in Jakarta and other locations in Indonesia. We're also seeking the opportunity with them or directly support with our talents in industry township. But for the big project, especially for the power plant, for the toll road, this kind of infrastructure sectors, I believe government support is most important. In Indonesia, we have PPP model can support with the government for local, and also some international cooperation from the ADB or Asia Infrastructure Bank is considering to support. For the Mr. Kim Sean, I believe later maybe we can set up a meeting directly to see a lot of the opportunity in Indonesia. We can seeking for some support from the Korean company what we can do for Indonesia. For infrastructures, I believe this is a great opportunity. But similar like the question, first question by Mr. Kim, the land ownership is the most important for due diligence before any financial support for the projects. That is my concern about the Indonesia project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. 프랭크 부사장님의 말씀은 이제 인도네시아
Thank you. His comments were about how the Indonesian government will be looking to the financial markets of Singapore or other Asian hubs so that the financing costs would be lowered. So suppliers' credit would be leveraged. Now, a lot of Korean construction companies would be interested in this, because this would offer them an opportunity to have competitive financing costs. On the Indonesian side, we hope that more favorable policies will be rolled out in the coming months and years. So this was session 3. And Mr. Frank Sun is quite an expert in this field, and he has delved into some details, which I have no doubt sparked interest from all of you. So I hope that Korean companies who are interested, or financial institutions in Korea that are interested in entering the Indonesian market, would look into these options and programs. So thank you. I would like to thank our panel members for joining this discussion. Thank you. Please give them a warm round of applause. Due to some technical difficulties, we were not able to go on to the Q&A session during session 1. So let's go back to session 1 just for the Q&A segment.
박배나팀 그 답변 준비됐나요?
Has the response been prepared? Are we ready on that other side?
Yeah, hello. Hello. Yes. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry about the technical problems in session 1. So, about the question about PPP in Indonesia, In general, government encourage implementation of all sectors, especially in for infrastructure with high economic and financial viability. For example, connectivity infrastructure such as toll roads, airports, ports, and power plant, and also basic infrastructure also encouraged to use the PPP scheme, specifically in drink water management system and solid waste sector. And the issue, the high risk and project not feasible financially are the main obstacles in PPP in Indonesia. So for this reason, government, particularly Bappenas and Ministry of Finance, providing government support and government guarantee payment for service and tax incentives. Because PPP projects are not financially feasible, but economically feasible. Therefore, the government can provide support in the form of the Viability Gap Fund or VGF. VGF is a fund provided by government for PPP projects in order to improve the financial viability of a project, which is usually used in infrastructure development. And to accelerate the PPP process or stage, supporting institutions have also been formed to preparation agency in financing support, such as the Committee for the Acceleration of Priority Infrastructure Provision, and then PT SMI, which role as a preparation agency in mentoring or financing a project, and also government formed PT PII Indonesia Infrastructure Guarantee Funds as the infrastructure development guarantee instrument. And while for political guarantee, PPP and private financing also already state as source of fund for development in Indonesia in our medium-term national plan or in work plan and yearly. So currently, 1990 PPP projects have been identified with a value more than 45 billion USD, and it shows that government, Indonesia government, political will government to support PPP scheme as one of the mechanism to develop our infrastructure. I think that's the simply answer for the question in the session one. But for more details, we can coordinate further, because we need to coordinate to, especially with Ministry of Finance. Thank you. That's all. 감사합니다.
Thank you for your response. Does anyone have any additional questions? I think we would have to still think thoroughly about currency risk, because if the currency exchange rate fluctuates, there might be some risks implied. So lastly, someone from KEPCO, I believe, has a question. So we will have this question be the last question during this session and wrap up today's event. Thank you. Thank you for waiting for me for my last question. Now, because of the pandemic, KEPCO 2 has seen a fall in power demand during the first quarter by about 1%. This also means that our profits went down as well. I assume that the situation is quite similar in Indonesia as well. So, how does the pandemic affect the P&L of the Indonesian government bodies or government-owned enterprises? Jungbu Power Plant has been participating in the construction of the thermal power plant, and the construction for the Java power plant has just started. So would you say that the financial implications from the pandemic would have a blow to these projects? For example, in delaying the entire timeline of the construction or other implications? Now, because of the worldwide pandemic, there are some concerns that the projects or infrastructure development initiatives that are currently underway might have to suffer a little bit. So could you comment on that, please?
We have a impact of pandemic in electricity, gas, and water supply. And in semester 1, 2020, growth of electricity, gas, and water supply sector minus 0.8, and decreasing levels of national electricity consumption. Electricity sales in 2020 compared to 2019 have decreased quite sharply since March of minus 2.3% and peak in May at 14%. And the groups that experienced a decline were business and industry, but meanwhile the household group still experience increase. And delays in the implementation of electricity infrastructure project, there are at least 17 projects related to the power plant experiencing a problem in the supply of materials and labors, and there are 7 projects which had a significant impact in that caused the project to be late, and it's affect the local power system. And I think that's the answer, and thank you.
예, 답변 감사드립니다.
Thank you
추가적인
for
질문이
your
있으신가요?
response. Any more questions?
예. 지금 이제 그 첫 번째 세션에서
So during the first session, we had some questions, but due to technical difficulties, we were not able to cover them. So we just covered them now. And now that we've reached the end of session 3, I think it's about time to wrap up on this note that we would like to see further cooperation between Indonesia and Korea going forward, especially in the sector of infrastructure development. We would also have to take into account the plan to move the economic capital of Indonesia. And with Hyundai Motor Company entering the Indonesian market in various sectors, I think there is a lot of expectation and hope for further cooperation. In the past, one of the issues was that the value chains of Korean corporations and local Indonesian companies were not entirely integrated. There were also issues of financing services where the financing costs were not that competitive.
한인도네시아 협력 4.0 시대를 맞이할
But we are now
터였습니다.
entering a new
오늘
era
포럼을 통해서
dubbed
한인도네시아
a
간의
cooperative
경제
era
협력이
4.0
더욱더 넓어지고
for
그다음에
industrial
더
development in
이렇게
Indonesia.
계기를
So I hope that we can
기대하면서
see some
오늘
tangible
포럼을
results
마치겠습니다.
in this
참석해
area.
주신
Once
여러분께
again, thank you for
감사드립니다.
attending this
네,
event.
진행해주신 세 분께 다시 한번
Thank
큰
you.
박수
Let's give the
부탁드리겠습니다.
three gentlemen a warm round of applause.
이제 포럼을 모두 마칠 시간이 된 것
Okay, so
같습니다.
now it's time
오늘
to close
발표된
the
포럼과
forum.
토론의 주요
And
내용은
the
내일자 세계일보
discussions and
그리고
the
세계
talks
비즈니스
today,
포츠
tomorrow
월드 신문지면
at Segye
그리고 두
Ilbo will
매체
be reporting
인터넷
on that, and
홈페이지를
you can also
통해서
see it on the internet
자세하게
news
보도가 될
media of the Segye
예정이니까요.
Ilbo,
참고해
the
주시기
results of this
바랍니다.
forum. So please
오후
refer to
2시부터
that as well.
장시간 동안
From 2
함께해 주신
o'clock
참석자
until
여러분
now,
그리고
thank you very
유튜브로
much for your
시청해주신 시청자 여러분
participation.
다시
Everybody
한번
here in the
진심으로
venue with
감사드린다
us, and also
말씀드리고요.
those watching through
이상으로
YouTube.
세계일보와
Thank you
세계
very much.
비즈니스 포츠월드가
And
주최한
so once
2023
again, the
세계 아세안
2020
포럼
Segye
모든
Asean
일정을
Forum we will
마무리하도록
conclude
하겠습니다.
here,
저는
co-hosted
지금까지 아나운서
by
김호정이었습니다.
Segye Ilbo and
고맙습니다.
Segye Sports and Business World Forum. Thank you very much.